Hi, Jax.
Garrett?
This week we watched two South Korean films that involve basements,
Oh yeah, they do.
peaches, and class warfare.
Yeah.
So let's start by talking about Parasite.
Yeah.
What did you think of Parasite?
So I rewatched Parasite this week, so I'd already seen it once. But yeah, first thoughts, Parasite, I fucking crave. It's awesome. I've loved every film by that director. I love the way it's shot. I love the score. I love the stories, the twists, the turns, the performances, all the things. I really, really enjoy it. And first thoughts, I really, really like it.
I really liked it. I guess it drummed up all this attention.
Yeah, I heard a lot about it before I saw it. The only reason I saw it, it wasn't because, the host, the guy who made The Host and Snowpiercer and all these movies I love, he's making a new film. And so I didn't race out to see it. People were like, hey, this movie, Parasite. I was like, oh, buy the guy I like. And that poster, that weird poster where he's like, everyone's faces have got that like black line over it. There's like the legs, I think, of like presumed to be a dead body because it's very pale, on like a weird lawn, which is the rich family's house. We don't know that yet. And there's a kid with his little Indian tent and stuff. But I looked at the poster and was like, wow, there's a lot more there than you realize, but it's hard to grasp what's going on in that poster. And that's really all I saw before I saw the movie. So I had fucking no idea. Actually, no. I was gonna go watch this movie. I was really, really keen to see Parasite. People kept saying, go see Parasite. It's up for awards and all that kind of stuff. I was like, ooh, I'm keen to see this. People seem to like it.
The best Korean movie ever.
And another Korean movie, which happens to be The Handmaiden, I was also so excited to see, because I think maybe you and maybe someone else had been like, watch this film. And then someone on fucking line was like, oh, if you want to watch, it's big spoilers for all the fucking things now, but it was like, if you, in terms of Parasite, they're like, oh, if I wanted to watch a movie about like a poor person swindling their way in and like defrauding or dismantling like this rich family, I'd rather watch The Handmaiden. And immediately, both stories I felt like were just ruined. I was like, I didn't know a fucking thing about either movie except I was South Korean. And now you've just gone, pfft. And so I started Parasite and I forget to get this, but I did have an idea. Rich person being infiltrated, like a poor person infiltrating a rich family. That was like the basis, I guess, of both. But when I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, so the South Korean. So I was like, infiltrating. So, because the word infiltrate was used. So I was like, maybe a spy. And then I was like, oh, I don't really know much politically, except there's a big difference between North Korea and South Korea. Like, I don't know about it, but I know that there. So I was like, maybe it's to do with that.
Yeah.
Infiltrating spies, all this kind of stuff. And so I kind of forgot about the rich versus poor thing.
Also, being Bong Joon-ho, he's done weird stuff with like, I thought, is someone going to have a new alien parasite in them? And it'll be like, because he did Okja with this
the big pig,
the big
CGI pig, yeah.
And then The Host, and like all these
monster creature effects and stuff.
And then Snowpiercer, which was like very sci-fi. So I thought, are we going to get a very weird like indie sci-fi parasitic? Like I kept waiting for this thing, and both movies kind of very interesting. Even though they were kind of spoiled for you, it doesn't even really spoil it because they both double twist.
Yeah, no, my presumption for Parasite particularly actually like kind of made me go, because I was like, I was so excited, and then I was like, well, I'm gonna watch it now because this has been spoiled, so only more can be spoiled. And often I don't find that I can really, if I see a movie, I've seen the trailer, I've heard something, I've seen a poster, but even the poster, I was like, the black things made me think spies, like their identities, on spy things, the black little thing. I think that's why.
The redacted.
Yeah, the redacted things. But so I was like, okay, I'll be as generally aware of what's going on. But then very early on, it's like, this kid's like living in the semi-basement. He's like, they're looking for Wi-Fi. So I was like, okay, these are the poor guys, obviously. And then when he gets the job, I'm like, okay, is this the infiltration? This is not really... This is a fun, rollicking romp, if anything.
Then the sister gets the job, and you're like, okay, I get it.
I get what's... And then I was like, okay, I get it, because I actually forget now, but before the movie starts, Parasite, it's like, what is the parasite? Picking a name sometimes, I think, is like a name can just be a name. Like The Handmaiden, it's a good name. But Parasite, it's like, fuck, man, you could call that movie so many different things, I think. You could, I don't know, you could call it so many things, but calling it Parasite, immediately I'm like, who or what is the parasite? Is it real Is it, you know, like, are the rich people going to be the parasites? Are the poor people? I mean, we're saying rich and poor because it's very black and white. And one of my favorite aspects of this film, very favorite, is that, like, it's a very obvious class kind of divide. And the guys live in the semi-basement, just climbing their way up to get into the rich. But often, and I think even with this guy's other films, like I watched Snowpiercer again last night. That movie's the most black and white thing in the world. They're like literally on one side of a train, just trying to fucking fight their way all the way through all the classes.
And there's no windows on their end.
Yeah, and then when they get through that first area, like they like see outside and they're like, oh my God. And that is literally them. Like there's points where Chris Evans is just like, do I go back to save my friend Jamie Bell? No, I gotta keep going and get through. And it's very black and white in that. And I think with something like a sci-fi like that, it can be strong and powerful, and it can be black and white. And I could not be like, oh, it's a bit, life's a bit grey. It's like, no, that is what the movie is. It's about a fucking train that survived the world exploding or whatever. Yeah, there's a bit where she's like, oh yeah, some people laughed at him. It seems absurd. Some people laughed at him because this train is so like prepared for everything, and that's why it's the only, and it's absurd. It makes no fucking sense. And that's why a thing like that can be black and white. This movie, which even though it is it's not like real, it doesn't feel realistic, but it, in comparison, is very real story. Like there's still absurd extreme elements, but it feels much more real and like kind of relatable. And I love that in this movie, the poor people are presented in one way and the rich people, they're not presented in the poor good, rich bad.
Yeah.
The rich guys, just the family, the Parks.
Statistically, yes.
No,
because most people have Park or Kim as their last name in Korea.
Oh,
So
my God.
Park is like the Smith of the Korean. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
But that's what the family's called, the Parks.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, because it's Mr. Park.
Yep.
Yeah, he's like, hey.
Yeah.
But I just loved that, like, throughout the entire film, they're never presented where they're like looking down. That's just in a way where they're like, look
Completely unlikable
at
rich
these, unlikable
people.
rich snobs. Look at the 1%. Look at them up there on their heights looking down. And I just
Even talking about the repeated element, which is continually throughout the film, of the smell. The
best part of the film.
Yeah, and it's not even. They could have played that, I think, in a very different way. Like
The same dialogue presented differently, I think.
Yeah. But you kind of understand it, but also.
Well, it's fucked.
This-
but it's,
yeah.
well, like for me, this is the first best thing to talk about. The smell for me was when I finished the film, I was like, what the actual fuck? Because it's such an interesting decision to make, and the way it's presented throughout the film. And I think the opinion for me is that they're not bad people; they're just rich, and that might make them a bit like.
Well, they're segregated from the world. Even the houses.
Yeah, even the house where it's segregated. He's like climbing up the steps. There's all this green suddenly, and the lights like blinding him before he gets there. Like it's cut off from where they are. And my favorite, probably not favorite. There's a few really great scenes. One of my favorite just dialogue moments is towards the end of the film. The reveals and twists and turns that happen, but they're all like hidden under the table. And the family come and they sit down. They've come home. The little son's gone off. He's in his teepee outside, and they're sitting there. And suddenly he just goes, "You can just a bit of the main dad's smell, aroma, has kind of just lingered in the air and hit him." And he's just like, "Oh." But right now in this scene, we know that they're listening in, but they're alone, having an intimate moment at home, snuggling on the couch.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of casually says like, "Oh, what's that smell?" And she's like, "Oh, that's smell." He's like, "Oh, really? It's pretty pungent. It's
Mr. Park.
yeah." He's like, "Yeah, like Mr. Park." It's like I think he's Mr. Kim.
Mr. Kim,
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
And so it's like, so he's like, "Yeah, like Mr. Kim, that smell, like the smell of the subway." He's not going like the smell of. He's just trying to find a way to describe it.
Yep.
And then she goes, "Oh, okay." And I don't know. It was. The fact that he didn't tell it to Mr. Kim. He wasn't like, "Get your act together, you fucking poor son of a bitch. You work for me. You smell. Put some deo on it." It's like, I don't know. I feel like even if he had that conversation with her, with him in the room doing housework or in the car or anything, but it just felt like he was just having a private conversation with his wife, just discussing this smell difference. Because they're so rich, they're so high up, that literally there's a scene where they have to run away from the rich house down to where they live, and every single shot is just them running down. They just keep descending, and then you start seeing like the telephone wires and the dirt, and you really get down to the grime, and that's when it gets to the flood scene.
Yeah.
And like just, you know, there's really clever ways to like bring them up and down, but it never felt like the actual characters themselves were like, look at us up here. They just were up there. Yeah. And so the smell is just different up there. And she just casually is like, I haven't been on the subway for ages. And it's not like, fuck the subway, fuck this. It was just like, it's because we just have too much, I have money, so why would I catch the subway? You know what I mean?
I heard someone say something recently, not related to this film, but it was, I think it was, never attribute to maliciousness what can be attributed to stupidity. Or I guess even better, ignorance in this term.
Ignorance.
And they are just both ignorant of the world, especially the wife. I mean, she's introduced as, she's a bit simple. The university friend is like, can't even really quite say what it is, but he's like, she's a bit simple. Yeah.
Her portrayal of that, like, simple without being like too dumb, but kind of being weirdly naive, like a bit over-obsessed as a parent who clearly doesn't have too much of her own stuff going on. She's got that like, my kid's the greatest thing in the world.
She has nothing to do all day. Yeah. Like there's a part where her husband comes home and she's just fallen asleep on the couch and she just gets up and she's scrambling after him and he's kind of walking and she's following and then the maid's behind him. And you know, like
that's a great,
she just kind of exists in this sterile, like clean environment where everything is taken care of for her. She doesn't really have anything to do but obsess over her kids, and she's poured all of this obsession into her son, who she thinks is a genius, who is
like
just
4 or something. He's very young.
The weirdest part is that kid has like a weird Picasso painting that is like framed on the wall. My mum has almost exactly the same Picasso painting that I did as a kid framed on her wall that she thought was magnificent, that I remember doing in like grade 1 or 2 and thinking, this is garbage. Yeah, like I made it.
I can imagine you going on that.
Yeah, I'm like, this is not even the best in this room of children. As a child, I knew this, and I brought it home, and my mum went, "Oh my god!" I'm gonna try and get my mum to send a photo, and I'll put it on screen now because the similarity was actually kind of shocking. Where I was well, yeah, like
that kind of face maneuver. Yeah.
And what does he say at some point? It's a chimpanzee, and she's like, no, it's a self-portrait. And I remember in class we were being taught about Picasso, and then the teacher said, draw your self-portrait like Picasso, and it looked like they'd given that kid the same exercise that I got when I was in primary school. Maybe. And the parallels between the two paintings, I was just floored by it.
Isn't it so weird when things like that happen? They're just so direct, like the image or the word or whatever.
Yeah, but it immediately made me go, okay, this mum is just out of touch.
Of course,
in the same way that my mum was out of touch.
But of course,
she just looked at this.
Son, of course.
She just looked at this thing I did and was just like, wow, I didn't know you had this in you, and I'm so proud. And she framed it, and my mum still has it at her house. So.
Yeah, there's definitely a few paintings at my mum's house, or like just drawings that me and my brother have done. 100%. I think that's. Yeah. But I love that she kind of takes that to that extreme level of like, and she's so easily manipulated by the sister character. When she starts doing that art therapy. The best thing is when she's talking about the art therapy later, and she's like, I googled art therapy, and then 10 minutes later she's just crying. What a fucking
idiot. Improv the rest.
Yeah. Another aspect of, just before we find out, because I'd love to discuss like the idea of who's the parasite as the film goes on, because I actually think it feels like there's 3 parasites for me. But when the film first started, because I keep forgetting this, it's often really hard to like remember before you know like what it is, like what a movie is. Like when a movie's playing, you can still be like, oh, is it this? But when you finished it and then you rewatch it, it's like, you know what it is. Like, so the second watch, I wasn't like, what's the parasite? I mean, well,
you're kind of
rethinking it, but I'm not, I guess what I mean is I'm not like, is the parasite a real animal? Is someone a bug inside a person? You know what I mean? And the start of the film, something happens that I was like, I forgot until I was rewatching. I'm like, oh my God, I thought it was a fucking monster movie. There is the fucking creepiest part of the movie. And when I was rewatching, I still found it a bit, I don't know, I'll be interested to see what you take from it, because it really unsettles me in a weird way. And I'm not sure if it's just the way it was shot. But we first come into the house and he's like, his friend's like, you work for this lady, la da da, and it's the simple lady, the mum. And he goes up to the house, he walks up, it's all gorgeous and beautiful. He meets the lady and she's like, oh no, I'm just the housemaid, come in. And it's all green and shiny and beautiful. He walks into this lush, beautiful house. And then we see outside, and it's the classic like segregation thing. There's like a window, it's like the housemaid and her. And all this kind of, not basic, but clever, well-framed, all that kind of stuff. But she's like lying there on a table like out cold, dead. And I remember when I first saw it, I was like, she's dead. Is she already dead? And because she's just kind of like,
What a way to start.
in a weird way, she's just like this. And then the housemaid kind of comes through the frame, through that line, the obvious class divide line, and kind of going, and just wakes her up. And she's just kind of like, and something about that made me go, yeah, she's an alien. She's the parasite. All rich people, oh, I get it. The 1% are parasites. They're all aliens. They're all disconnected and distouched. They don't, because that was fucking weird. And this is the only part of the film where I was like, I don't know, man. Is it just there for a red herring to make you think something's off?
Potentially, but like I said, later on we see her just asleep on the... I think it's literally just that she doesn't have anything to do with her time.
But later on when she's asleep and wakes up, nothing about that makes me go, that's not a human. Whereas the way she's positioned, I think it's like this, like with her head on the table, or like this, or just something where the way she gets up and it's all just, something about it made me go... And also when you're thinking Parasite, and he's made monster movies and big CGI pig movies and Snowpiercer is just like a train of like class divide.
When I saw the poster and when I heard the title of the movie, my immediate thought was just, you remember that scene in Annihilation when they cut the guy's stomach open and the thing is...
Yeah, twirling.
I don't know why, that's just my immediate thought was, this is what we're going to get.
Yeah,
like,
something
this is,
weird, perverse kind of, But
it's not. It's not that at all. It's a real world class divide, and no one's innocent and no one's guilty. And you can kind of, I think, I've seen a lot of people just taking out of this movie what they've put into it.
Yeah.
Like
Which is hard not to.
Yeah, like one character, it works better. I mean, they're all completely flawed. They're all flawed in different ways, and they're all ignorant in different ways, and they're all kind of evil and good and pure, and it's fantastic.
The thing I found really interesting, especially watching it again, where I wasn't like not trying to figure out, but you know, when you're first watching, you're just kind of enjoying, and then the first time I was like, this is just a fun romp. They're trying to get jobs. This is relatable. I love this. Scene after scene where he's like, he swindles his way in, and then he hears something, he's like, oh, my sister could do this. And the sister's like, oh, the dad could do this. And the dad's like, oh, maybe the mum can come in. And they all just swindle their way into the family with fun, silly stuff. And it's all really fun. And then they're all sitting there drinking, enjoying it. And I remember, you know when you're watching a film and you're like, this is what it's talking about. And then there's a scene where they just start talking about what the film's about. And it was like, they're sitting there and they're like, oh, the lady mum, the rich mum, she's so simple and like, and she's but nice. She's so nice. And then the poor mum, I mean, I'm saying poor and rich, just to be easier, because I've forgotten all their names, because I find the Korean names quite hard to remember, unfortunately. But the mum of the poor family, she is like, I love what she does as well. She's like, if I had all of this, I would also be rich. I don't know, I would also be nice, even nicer. And I was like, yeah, of fucking course. Like, I mean, because there's a divide. You can be that rich, but then not be nice. But it's like, you can be that rich, but be nice. And the way they describe it is like, all like the crinkles are ironed out. All the rough stuff, the money just irons it out. And I think this film is almost more about like, I don't know, it reminded me a bit of like when we were talking about the Uncut Gems and the money and like the drive of the money. But the money almost being something that's more than what it actually is. Because I found it really fascinating this time, especially towards the end. The final bloodbath finale isn't like once we get revealed to like what I would like to call the true parasite, which maybe we'll get back to that in a second. But when we get to that true, like the true parasite, I mean, everyone can be whatever you see it, but I kind of saw him as the real parasite in terms of just the kind of a literal sense of it. But when he kind of is unleashed and he comes up, it's like all the chaos and carnage of the last part of the movie is just all the people from the lower social economic ground, like all kind of trying to claw their way up to what they think they want, with this rich life and what the money can get them, and the desperation to stay there. And I think the most horrible moment is when, I mean, it's kind of funny in the moment, but then later I find it very heartbreaking, is when all the chaos is going on and the family like, we're coming back from the
make Ramdon and
and she's like, what the fuck's Ramdon? Ah! And it's just the chaos and it's like dun, 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 and the classical music's playing, it's all building and building and all this absurdity is happening and the family's coming home and they're all trying to hide and stuff, and then she's bringing the food and it's all building, but then the other woman's coming up the stairs and then she just goes and goes poof, and she just kicks her down the stairs. And then, boom, 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 head hit. And you do think at that point that she's dead.
You don't get confirmation for a couple of minutes until the father kind of checks her
Yeah,
breath
and then he's
and
like,
then goes,
oh,
thank God.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess what's kind of interesting, especially on the second watch, was like, I don't know, I kind of forgot in all the chaos and carnage, it's like, it's just the poor people killing and fighting each other to stay in this other step above. And that, because I forgot at the end, but it's like, he comes out to the party, and it's not to kill the rich family or do anything like that. He goes for the daughter because he knows if he gets the daughter, the mother, who he can't see right now, will appear. Because the lady, when she dies, because of the peaches, is just like, Chang-suk. I think it's Chang-suk. She's like, remember that name? And it's just kind of like, holy shit. And I know, it's the phrasing what she said. She's like, she was such a nice lady. She pushed me down the stairs.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, she was probably the nicest one. Like
well, even their dynamic, the two, like the previous maid and then the mother of the main family, the way they call each other sis, and how they are each dismissive of the other one as the power shifts.
Yeah.
Which makes me think that line that she says, where if I had the money and it would be all evened out, but when we see her with power over that other woman,
no, she kicks her.
She treats her like, and just in conversation.
Oh, beforehand, yeah, she's like, fuck you.
Yeah, don't call me sis. And then as soon as the tables are turned,
she's like, fuck you.
Yeah. You know, so I don't, that was very
interesting. It's kind of the ignorance of being like, well, I don't have this, but if I had this, I'd be better than you.
Yes.
It's like when you're working somewhere and your manager sucks and you're like, if I was manager, I'd be great. Then you become manager and you're like, oh fuck, I've got all these responsibilities. Hey, you're not doing a good enough job, which reflects on me, so I need to tell you. And then you become the manager. Because you need, it's tricky. You can't always think.
It's a big balancing act.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I found like kind of that hit me a lot harder the second time, I guess. Just in terms of like the scramble and the desperation and like it's all infighting between the people who don't have the money trying to maintain
at the bottom,
that money,
scrambling,
just trying to climb up. And then the only thing that interacts and actually affects the rich family is the unintentional dismissal of the character by the smell. Like it's only the stepping stone to the smell and Mr. Kim's who MVP of this movie. MVP of everything he's in, he's so good.
He's really good.
It kind of makes me feel like, I'm like, if he wasn't in this, like, I don't know. It's like the host. I'm like, I don't know. I could just kind of imagine it without
I feel like him and the mum are both. I mean, they are just really kind of embody these characters, maybe more than everyone else in the movie.
I love it.
Maybe it's because the other people are more understated, and I know a lot of the times I gravitate towards the flashy performance, and then when I revisit things, I go, you know what? That guy who was just playing a normal dude was actually really good.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll think differently next time. But on surface value, they are just
Another thing I thought was kind of...
One thing I did want to question, and something that I don't really know, the father keeps asking if he loves his wife. He does it twice in the movie.
He does, yeah.
And
he's like, and at one point he's like, because you love your wife. He's like, yes, let's call it that. So he doesn't love her. That must be the implication. I don't think I actually properly processed that. But now you're saying that is a bit. That is a bit in the movie. What is that saying?
I don't really understand. And they do, maybe it's just he's almost crossing the line but not quite doing it at any point.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just to do that, but I really didn't know what they were going for there. And I found it interesting because, you know, these things don't get repeated by accident. There's meaning behind it, and I'm not sure I've figured it out yet.
I'm just trying to think in terms of it could be, I don't know, because I mean, I could hypothesize that it's some kind of comment of like, you know, the more money up there, you just kind of You just fall into the positions, and she's happy to stay there, and he's happy because it's just easy. And so, whereas they're down there in the slums fighting, so they really love each other. So it could be that kind of thing. But I think this film isn't that simple. You can have simple ideas for sure. But last week we talked about Joker and the muddled kind of rich poor kind of thing, and it's, I don't know. I kind of was maybe too nice on the Joker in terms of just, especially watching these two films. I was like, this is how you do it. Yeah. And if you don't do it this subtly, you do it like Snowpiercer. Just fucking smack black and white and have them literally move in one direction, killing the rich on their way up, and get there and the rich are like got children in the cogs. Like, be extreme. Fuck, that movie's good, man. I was like, oh my God.
I wish I
only got
rewatched
halfway
it.
through it last night. I fell asleep, but like, it really blew me. I was like, this guy's so good. Yeah. Okay, so should we discuss the basement? Because that's also a huge aspect of the film that I think is probably, like, I fucking listened to just, the most mainstream radio on my way to work recently, and they were talking about Parasite because it won the Oscar, so it's getting talked about by people who wouldn't, like the fucking most mainstream radio in Melbourne. But they were just like, it was really funny because they were talking about it, and they're just like, well, it gets to this basement bit, and it's damn good, man. And I was like, it's kind of weird. I mean, part of me feels like you're being paid to say that just because, I don't know. That's just my cynical brain. But I was also like, it's kind of amazing that even these people are like, it's stunning filmmaking because it is fucking wild. I feel like the way the film is like, we jump here and it's like the son gets in, then he gets the sister in, gets the dad in, gets the mum in, and then they're all there and they're all celebrating and it's built and it's a fun romp. It's a heist romp to get into a rich family as their servants, to be overpaid for things we don't need to do, like the art therapy and, I mean, the car and driving, all that stuff. But it's just so clever the way that, like, it starts off and the fumigation comes in. He's like, it's good, we'll get rid of all our parasites in our house. And like, they're folding the boxes. Also that bit where the smoke's coming right at the start and they're all like, cough, 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 like, and the dad's just like, and just doing the boxes perfectly. I also kind of like to imagine that scene after where she's like, a fourth of the boxes are fucked. Then it was the dad getting them all wrong because they were all actually taking their time and he was
probably high on fumes.
Yes, he was just smashing through them. So I feel like the film builds to this kind of climax, and we're only halfway through the movie. So I don't know, I don't feel like it was the end, but I feel like the film was building itself. They've all got in, the family's gone away for the weekend, we have the house, and they're all sitting there having that conversation, and they're discussing like, well, this is pretty good. We got our drinks, we got food, look at this, look at the view, it's all beautiful, and they're kind of lavishly enjoying it. But, especially when we don't know yet, but in contrast to other people who might be in their same position, lavishly enjoying it, I loved the difference. They've just got their drinks sprawled everywhere, got the food. I think at one point, and I could be misremembering this, they're pouring just different alcohols into the one drink, just making a fucking horrid fucking King's Cup kind of thing going on. And I just awful, you know?
Also, the sister is eating dog treats.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's just so like, they don't even know, it's like they almost don't know how to properly appreciate it. And they're like, this is what we gotta do, just gotta consume it all. And maybe that's saying something, but it's like, I just loved that whole thing, and you're like, they won. They've done it. They got the heist thing, and then it's like, wow.
There was a Parasite before you guys, and then we descend.
That for me, the second time, it was interesting because it lost, like the only part of the film that wasn't as good for me was just the basement moment, because often with a twist and a turn, it can make a film better or worse just in terms of like, how much of the film is building to that moment, how much it works looking reflectively on it. Because the first half is pretty much what it is anyway. I don't know, it's interesting because that turn, man, like when she rings the bell, the first time I was just like, what is she doing back here? She was just part of the fun rollick. We got rid of her.
What did she say? I left something precious in the basement, something like that. And you're like,
I just forgot something in the basement.
Yeah.
I forgot something in the basement. And my brain wasn't like, basement? Because since this movie, when I watched The Handmaiden and they mentioned basement, I was like, basement, what? What is with South Korean awesome movies and basements? I am confused and intrigued. But this basement, I was like, okay, all right. And they let her in, and it's a bit weird, but then there's this shot. And she's got the hood on, and all kind of moving in this weird way, and she's all wet and jittery. She's acting 100% differently to before. It felt like a different character entirely. Not in a weird way where I'm like, who is this? But I was like, who is this? What has happened? What's changed? Honestly, it took me seconds when the full reveal happens, and I was still like, what's happening? I don't get this. It was such a weird, like, oh no. I was like, what is it that was so bizarre? Is she's coming down, and I was just, something weird's gonna happen. And then she's just like, up against the wall, like pushed, like.
And there's a thing stuck under, which is why she can't get it.
She's just in this weird, like, pushing, and it's just an absurd. Sometimes when I see absurd things that are humorous, I don't even laugh. I'm just like, it's the same when later when it's flooding, she's on the toilet. Kind of funny imagery, but I'm just so overwhelmed by the absurdity and the horror and just the imagery. Yeah. And this lady, she's just on this wall, pushing against this thing, and it's just, what the fuck am I looking at? And then they help her, the thing's on the thing, and then we descend. Just incredibly. I was like, what is down there? What could be down there? Why? Why? I just didn't understand what the fuck was going on. And then when we get down there,
what does she start doing immediately? Like feeding him milk?
She's coddling him, and she's feeding him stuff and feeding him water at first, being like really afraid that he's not getting the food because her husband's down there. And what I like to call the true parasite of the film, because I did think it was the family, you know. All at first I was like, it's the rich people, and I'm like, it's the family. I mean, this is not like the only thing I'm thinking about, but it's in the back of my mind. And then it's like, oh my God, like here he is, this fucking creep. But for me, the most unsettling thing, because forever for me, if you were to like, if I see someone in real life drinking a glass of milk, just milk, I freak out. I get unnerved and I feel disgusted. Because I think it's just something that's been in movies. Like the only one I can think of straight away is Clockwork Orange, where one of the first shots in the movie, it zooms in or zooms out, and he's just drinking milk. At a milk bar, like not a milk bar, but like at a bar that only sells milk. And that just is always fucking, that movie's horrific and amazing, but disturbing and awful and ugh. But that character, so charming and watchable, but his milk drinking, it's just, so forever, I see people drink milk and I'm like, it's a serial killer. You're a serial killer. You're a fucking monster. Why could you drink milk like that? Like it's evil. It's just, now for me, it is eating a banana the way this fucking guy, the banana's out and he just goes, oh, oh. He doesn't take a bite. I mean, I love eating bananas. His head moved just down the banana in just, I don't know, the first time I was too overwhelmed by everything. This time I was like, it's just this disgusting visual imagery of what he is. I mean, he says like, oh, I had a bad business deal, all this stuff. But he's also like just living under this guy's house like a cockroach, an actual cockroach. That's what they fucking do. They live in your house, under your shit. And I don't know what cockroaches eat, but I imagine they eat your stuff. I don't know. I don't have cockroaches in my, but that's what the image of it is. This thing that shouldn't be there, just kind of siphoning away in this consuming way. The way the family is at the top, just drinking and lavishly doing it, but that's almost a bit more like joyous because we just got here. This guy down, just yeah, the way
he's been creeping up and gone into their fridge, and even that shot of him,
the reveal that I rewatched that and it didn't actually generally disturb me as much. It was more like this is a good framing stuff. When it first revealed and we get the actual. Because what happened in first grade, the art therapy thing, I thought was just a fun little tidbit that she's like somehow maneuvering to actually reveal that that's this fucking parasite, this gross little fucking monster. I just think the way he just acted, it just felt so like, oh, the whole thing and the way she's calling him, it really is that banana shot. Because like, I stopped when I was rewatching it and I just like paused for a moment to just be like, gross. It's something about it. And maybe it's because I love bananas so much.
I thought the same thing.
I'm so glad you did.
Yeah.
Part of me was like, am I just insane? Is that just, you know when something just...
It's unnerving and it's like, I can't make sense of this. Like, what are they just trying to make me feel disgusted by this person?
I think it's just a simple thing of like, it's such a clever visual imagery of just consume. Right. He does, because when you're eating a banana, for instance, at work, we have bananas in our team room, and often I don't have time for my full break. So I'll just go in, and I start very, very early in the morning, so I don't really have time to eat breakfast. I'll go in, grab a banana, it takes me 30 seconds. But I don't just, it's a quick thing, but I don't eat it in one. It just, you take a bite, and you sit there, and you just hold the banana. I'm not sitting there being like, he doesn't even eat it, chew, and then it's just, eat it in one. But he can't eat it in one, so it's just a few chomps. It's just consume, more. And there's something about that. I think that's what it is. But maybe it is just eat it a weird way. And he decided to eat it like that. Like there's a fucking comedy I remember seeing. I think it's called Plebs or something, and it's like we're set in Rome, but it's the in-betweeners. It's actually pretty great. And there's a scene where they bring bananas to Rome. It's like this guy brings bananas. Like, what is this exotic fruit? And this lady, like, their boss is like, and she like eats the banana with the skin on and goes, and it's just very funny. But she's eating it not the way you eat a banana. So maybe it was just that, and he's like, find a weird way to do it. It's not funny. But I think the kind of that consume and that like, I don't know, because it's really interesting because he loves Mr. Park. Like that bit where he's like hitting his head like, respect! Respect! Like, oh, also, when I was rewatching that, you know when it sounds like it happens, like I was saying with The Handmaiden, like that music, what does it remind me of? When he's hitting his head and going, respect! I was like, this reminds me of something. And I remembered it before when we were talking off air about Mad Max.
Yeah.
Witness! The way he says, respect! Just, for some reason, just jars me straight back into that. And I'm just like, I don't know why, but I was like, that's the same thing. It's this same absurd, blind, like, follow obsession with something that's directed his mind. And I kind of love that he's not like, I'm here and fuck these guys. He's like,
he's
I love
somewhat
it.
respectful.
Yeah, he's super respectful. And that's kind of awesome because the new family, I don't feel as respectful. And I love that when she's first there and she's like, I'm going to tell the cops or whatever. And they come into the basement, but then the family's hiding and they all fall down. Idiots! And then she's like filming them so that the tides turn. And that's when it starts kind of fighting each other. And then the old parasites, they are like, I don't know, I love when we see them and they're like, we enjoy this house. And because earlier she's like, have you ever been to this rich house before? It's by Nom Jung or something like that, the very famous architect. And I just love that, like, when we see this new family sitting there, they're drinking and swirling, eating dog food or whatever because they don't fucking know. And this other family is just like dancing together. And the music's playing and they're like, we enjoy the architecture. And they're, I don't know, I feel like they really, like, they didn't take it for granted. They really appreciated that this was kind of more than they'd earned.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, not more than they'd earned, because I don't really, like,
They'd
let's say they
lucked
didn't
out.
earn, but they had lucked out and they didn't take that for granted, which I thought was a really interesting thing, because you could definitely play it the other way. Because I love that it's like they didn't seem evil, but then when they're all pitted against each other and it's you know, they've both got the
power
film,
play goes.
and it just goes back and forth, and then there's that amazing bit where she's got the thing and it's like, I'll hit send, and then it goes into slow-mo. I love the classical music throughout, but I mean, I'm not sure if it's picked actual classical music or it's the music that's just classical, like, feeling, that's new music for the movie, but a song plays when they're all stretched out trying to get the remote, and
the mum just like hurls herself, and she could, like, knocks the wind out of herself too, which felt so.
Oh, it's in a flash. Yeah, because it cuts to that flashback, and then the flashback is interrupted because she just fucking charges like a football player and attacks them, and it's just, it's so much chaos and anger, and like the switching of all that stuff. I thought was just so like, so entertaining and so wild. I really, constantly, I just didn't expect it to do what it did, especially towards the end when they kill like not many people actually die, but they kill everyone. Like when they're having that fight, the same thing that happened in Good Time, where he's like, oh, we're in this situation, so I'll just fucking pour a bottle of acid into that guy's mouth, ruining his life or killing him. This film has the same thing, where they're fighting and she could just do something. Instead, she gets the most poisonous, fucked up thing for this woman and just pours peaches all over her face. And then grabs the peach and rubs it in her face. And so it's like, oh, this fun art, you know, not art, but she's like used the art thing and she's a bit cocky and arrogant, but kind of in this way where I was really on her side. And then at the end, it's like, well, fuck, man. In a lot of ways, you kind of deserve to die in this, like, not that anyone ever does, but you kind of do in this situation.
If anyone does.
If anyone in this situation, it's you fucking went and got peaches. Your mum didn't say, get the peaches. You went, got the peaches, and rubbed them in her face. It's like, I don't know. It's not that they said specifically that the peaches would kill you, but if you grate a little bit of peach and blow in your face, and it gives her that reaction, it's...
You know what's
you,
up.
It's
you know what that's
that
doing. Yep.
So that was really horrific. And I also thought the most horrific thing is The Rock. It's so metaphorical.
Yeah.
When the film started, he's like, it's so metaphorical. I was like, I bet you this rock's somehow going to be metaphorical.
I feel like it's clinging to me. Doesn't he say that? And even his dad's like, you need to go to sleep.
That's kind of a scary moment. And then right at the end where he finds it and it's in the sewage water and he picks it up and he's holding onto it when they're in the big gym and then it takes it to the kid's birthday. But then the switch of how like he's taking it down there and he drops it and it falls. Oh, also, when you're already watching a film and all the tension is there but kind of not because you've forgotten, that was the only part of the film that proper shocked me. When he's like creeping down and he drops it, I was like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
So great. But honestly, the bit where he's chasing him back up with the rock and the other guy's like, and he swings and he misses. He swings again.
And the thing's attached to him and it's dangling.
And there's ding, 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 ding. And then he's running, sure. And then, just a shot, the guy's not even in the shot, he picks up the rock, boom, hits him. And then you get a wide. Sometimes, because I've shot stuff, I'm just aware of how you do stuff. You know, that first shot where he hits him, I'm like, well, you don't see the contact, of course. Then that wide, he just drops the rock on his face, and it doesn't do the absurd zombie thing where his head explodes, it just hits his head.
And you know the damage, yeah.
He's dead. Oh, he doesn't actually die, which I love that he's kind of a bit odd for a bit.
Well, he gets a Joker laugh.
Yeah, I love at the end where he's like, I'm laughing at the detective who doesn't look like a detective. The detective's like, oh, I'm going to read you a remark. He keeps laughing at me. I'm not a joke. And you're like, hey,
doesn't he fall down the steps while he's following him a little bit later? You know how he's like, the detectives are trailing him everywhere, then he falls down.
Yeah, in like the slum streets and stuff. The way the finale kind of ramps up and builds up to this horrible kind of like, just all the parasites, if you will, like are fighting within each other, and then just because of the situation, like right at the end, that third smell nose moment happens, where he just kind of in the midst of all of this, he just kind of goes, and it's the most exaggerated one. I think the mum in the car, when it's the first one where they have the conversation, he happens to overhear it, and then the next one where he's in the car and she's like, oh, and she does the window and it's kind of extreme. It's like she's become aware of the smell and he's just grating in on him. It's like, and they discussed it earlier. It's like, we can change our laundry. We can do all, because the kid's like, they smell the same. And you're like, oh, they're going to get found out.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's more of a fun romp at that point. You don't think it's going to, turn to murder. But that like idea that they couldn't wash it out. You're not going to be able to wash the smell out. It's because of where we live.
And everything that they own is,
The house just has that smell. And that kind of like, I don't know, like, when he's like, I really felt like that was seeping into him. To the point where like, as all the craziness is going on and he's sitting there and the dad's like, both dads are there and he's like, they're wearing the Indian outfits and he's his driver. He drives the car, that's all he does. And his dad's like, this other guy, the rich guy's just like, hey man, like he can kind of sense, he's like, so you really love your family, like you're doing all of this, like, ugh. And he's like, hey bro, like, you're getting paid for this. Consider this your job.
Yeah.
That was the only time in the film where I was like, hey bro, don't talk to people like that. Like, hey, this rich guy. That was the first time I was like, this rich guy sucks.
Yeah.
Because it was the first time, that party was the first time where it was like, they're so unaware that there was like flooding in their city so much that like thousands of people are in gyms and clearly an entire part of the city has been
party.
They're throwing a because they don't even know.
Doesn't the wife even mention how good the rain is for the garden? Something like that.
Yeah, she said it's amazing. She's like, oh, now we get to have a garden party. And like, she was saying something about how it washed everything away, and like something like that. And it's being so unaware of that. But then also just those little things started to like heighten a bit. Like she's like, oh, I've got so much to do this morning. Oh, don't worry, I can pay Mr. Park more. Mr. Kim, sorry, more. And it's like, she's so nice because any issue she can wrinkle out with some money. And it was.
She's on the phone next to the cash register while like someone's doing something for her. The other guy's taking it all. For her,
and she's almost
throwing bottles of wine in and just in her own world.
Yeah, completely oblivious to all the steps. And then when she does the smell thing, I felt like that was the first. It was like really starts ratcheting up like this kind of. I don't know. It's like I felt so sympathetic from this. Something about the smell thing, like it's such a person. To be told you smell is the most like it really is awful to hear, and like it's not like an evil way they look at it, but yeah, when he does that thing at the end, it's such a heartbreaking moment of you see that it's gone too far, and I do love that in the parts after, like the epilogue almost, he's like, it was a blur. It was this weird, like it felt real. It didn't feel real because what would happen is.
You even kind of see after he stabs him, he kind of snaps out. And it's almost like he disassociated for a moment, and then it comes back into it, and then just
what do I do?
Gets out of there.
Also, and this isn't fully my own thought, but I have no idea where I read this. But on the rewatch, I was like, oh, it's so obvious. It's like when they're having their big celebratory just before the basement switch and the whole movie turns into a different movie, they're having a scene where he's like, I'm awesome. I'm Mr. Kim, the dad you love me from the hearse. And you're like, I love this guy. And then there's the bit where the mum is like, no, you don't love him. He's a cockroach. If they came home right now, he'd scurry into the basement. He'd hide. And it's like, at that point in the film, you're like, I don't know, is that true? Rewatching it, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
His wife knows him too well, because what happens is he scurries off and literally goes into the basement like a cockroach or a parasite and becomes the new Parasite. And that's heartbreaking. Like when you like see something that's, I don't know, I found that character so like I love him, but I have almost a pre-brought love of him from all the things I've seen him in,
Yeah.
which is interesting. But also it kind of turns for me because when they're in the gym, the whole thing is like, oh, my son's got a plan. You've got a plan. You're working it out. This is all good. And then when he reveals that he's got a plan and that his plan is in fact to have no fucking plan,
Yeah.
that kind of terrifies me. And I don't know if I agree with his character anymore after that, because he does actually justify. It's weird because
It's quite nihilistic. Yeah.
it's
like nothing.
It's nihilistic,
nothing...
but in the bad nihilistic way. I don't know. I've talked to a friend about nihilism before. He's kind of shaped in a different way. That is less like, I don't know, because the way he puts it is like nothing matters. Which I don't know. You know, part of me is like nothing does matter. But then when he takes that a step further, I'm like, well, that's not what I mean when I think nothing matters. Nothing matters was like, don't stress too much. But then he goes, nothing matters. If I kill someone, nothing matters. It's like, no, nothing matters more in the way that, like, if you buy some bananas and open one and it's off, that doesn't matter. Nothing matters. It's a banana. You know what I mean? That's more like the nothing matters. Like, you had one bad day, just don't turn to the Joker.
There's the nothing matters, which is a neutral, and then there's the nothing matters, which I can go out and have an effect on the world.
I feel like it's evil nihilism.
Yes.
Like, nothing matters, but then if you're saying that and you're going to directly hurt others, yeah, I don't know. So it was just kind of weird because I felt like the character wasn't really like that. That one scene kind of throws me in it. Is it just, I don't know, I feel like maybe it's the character changing and he wasn't like that. And now because of the flooding of their house is fucked shit, man. They're so sad and horrific. And when they're running down the street, he's like, you stay back, this is all sewage water. It's like hard to properly fathom that. And people are throwing, it's hitting him. He's running, his friend's trying to get the bike out.
Did you leave the window open? Yeah.
And then the realization, oh my God, they're in a semi-basement. And then the realization the house isn't just flooded, it's ruined forever. There is sewage water up to they're like swimming through it. I think, I don't know, maybe he does break then. Because that conversation he has after with the gym, it feels so awful, like such a sad way. And the son does kind of go, damn, like he's like, oh man, like my dad has had this plan. His plan is fuck everything. It doesn't matter if I murder people. But I really don't feel like the dad even feels like that later when he murders. He doesn't kill Mr. Park and go, nihilism, right? What was I saying? Remember that speech? He's like, oh, what did I do?
Yeah.
Hide.
It's almost like he doesn't even believe it, but
yeah, he
did enough to do what he did.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I just think it's so, I don't know, maybe so sad and stuff. But something I was just thinking about with that flooding sequence, there's a bit where like they're getting the stuff, like what we're gonna, like the son picks up the rock. The dad picks up his wife's medal, his Olympic medal. Now, I could be wrong because it's only happened in 2 of the films I've seen. I think I've seen 4, maybe. I've seen 5 of this guy's films, I think. Well, 4.5. I fell asleep in one of them and I only saw the first half and the last half. But in The Host, the sister character is an Olympic she's an Olympic archer. And in this, the mum is an Olympic hurling the thing. Yeah. So this guy's got a thing with making like...
Yeah.
In my brain, I'm like, his sister or his mum is an Olympic medalist, right? Because it's such a weird thing to keep putting in. Or is it just that I've seen 5 of the films and in 2 of them, they happen to have this thing. And I think, you know how I was saying, what's with The Handmaiden in this film? They both have basements and peaches. But lots of films have those things. Like I'm just noticing because we just happen to be putting them together for whatever reason. I don't know. I thought that was weird, the Olympic medal thing. I kind of think it's just a fun...
Yeah.
For me, it's like a fun world-building thing, like a proper world-building thing where it's like, this She was an Olympic
Well,
fucking
there is something
hurley thingy.
I know that there is a lot to be said about the fact that Olympic athletes earn very little money. And I don't know if that has something to do with it. But they dedicate their entire life to it. And I mean, really, the amount that actually...
What will they get paid for that?
They get paid nothing.
Yeah, I mean, who's paying them?
Exactly.
Do they get paid to go to the Olympics?
A very small amount, but the amount that they've put into...
It's for more like prestige.
Yeah, absolutely.
I haven't thought about that before.
It's patriotism for your country, and it's going and representing, and it's working years and years and years of your life to do something that really the only reward you're going to get is glory, but you're not going to get any... Like the amount of Olympic athletes who get like a monetarily rewarded for the amount of work they put in would have to be less than 1%.
It'd just be the ones that are able to get like the Nike deals and shit, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sports sponsorships.
Subway deals or whatever.
Yep, and if you don't get that, then, you know, like you've earned peanuts for all this work you've done, and you go get your medal, and
teaching.
then... Yeah. And then you're rearing the next generation to do the same. So it's possible that is...
It could be an aspect.
I haven't seen The Host, though. I definitely should watch
it's fucking wild. I haven't seen it for years, and I often find, especially now we've been doing this, and I'm like thinking about my words. Like I remember actually specifically this week thinking, and I think probably I thought it every week. The first week we did this big Marriage Story, and I was so blown away with. I just don't really like those films. I was like, it's a masterpiece, and I'll say it right now. I'm gonna strip that masterpiece away and give it to this film, because really this film blows me away. Like I just started watching a little bit of it just to kind of like look at a scene, because I was thinking about the music thing. I was just sword up into it. I love the way he shoots it. I love the way the camera like moves and feels. Like some of the stuff is very like, I mean, we were talking about how like kind of opaque he paints the rich versus white, but then he has beautiful scenes where he's like, the way he shoots the kid, the son getting to the house the first time, he's kind of walking upwards, kind of lost, and he steps up, and then he's literally hit with blinding light, and then does a big circle, and there's nothing but green, even though it's all been concrete and gross. I mean, I kind of love it, but I love it in that kind of slummy way where I'm not actually there.
Yeah.
And then the way they come down as the movie, when they're running in the flood and they're just coming down. There's just one shot, and I think the staircase is like this, or just across like that. It's something like that, but it's just like, I think it's like that actually, when they're like ding, 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 ding. And it's just this descent, and then we start coming into all the wires, and like they're kind of crossing each other, and it becomes more cluttered and claustrophobic. And the way he shoots stuff, and you were talking about that shot where like the creepy basement parasite, and it's like the sun sees him once he just slowly arises, and the shot's so wide, and his whole face doesn't come up, it's just the eyes. So I remember watching the first time at night time on a big, nice screen at my mate's house, and just those two little white pupils just, and I was generally like, that would traumatize me as a kid. Yeah. Because how could you go, maybe we should check the basement for human being parasites. Oh, and the little things of words where he's like, oh, she was such a great housemaid. I mean, she ate for 2 people.
Yeah, there's so many little
things where it's like, that little thing, I remember being like, that's a little odd. Like, you know, she's not like overweight. There's not another scene where she's eating. Like, it was just kind of like, oh, that's fun. I mean, but in the back of my brain, the first time I was like, because of this and that, I was like, oh, she doesn't really seem like someone who would eat a lot. So I immediately was like, she's like hoarding the food for herself because she can't afford to eat. So she eats there with them, but then when she goes off by herself, she's it all kind of pieces together, but then it just comes back into really clever reinforcement of that like utterly shocking twist. I usually find that, I don't pride myself on it, because I think if you're like always looking for those things, it can be a bit like, I saw it coming. But I often find that I enjoy being like, ooh. Like I remember watching this weird movie once, I can't remember what it was called, but it was like, it started and it's like, time is an illusion, and sometimes this and that, and they just said the word time too many times, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're either playing with time, there's time travel, I was like, I know what's gonna happen if there's a twist. And there was. And halfway through, I'm like, because you said that thing at the start, you shouldn't have done that. I was on to you. But I think, I watched it with a mate, and he was like, what the fuck? I can't remember the start. I'm like, because it just did something where I went, this is what I would do. If I had something like that happening later, I'd just be like, you know, just give them a little taste. So I love like...
The screenplay is just tight. And like there's nothing there that doesn't need it. It actually, I don't know why I thought this, but the screenplay and how well structured it is just reminded me so much of the Back to the Future screenplay. Like everything set up pays off. Like it's just a perfect rounded.
Yeah, I haven't
like,
seen that movie for so long.
And like just the first one, not the other two.
Yeah.
The first one just every single thing in the first third of the movie just pays off and pays off.
It kind of builds in the middle and then it pays off. Yeah. Not that I didn't I guess not understand it perfectly. Like it kind of serves its purpose. The kid's obsessed with things and he's just been attached to this thing. But there felt like there was this kind of Americanized kind of touch to it, which I don't understand.
So this actually ties into The Handmaiden a little bit. Just in that The Handmaiden all takes place in the 30s. Yeah. So from, I think, the very early 1900s all the way to 1945, Korea was...
the end of the start of World War II?
That's the end of World War II. Were basically annexed by the Japanese.
Wait, they were what, sorry?
Annexed. In that they
occupied?
Yes, occupied by Japan.
Yeah, because I saw a thing that said Japan occupied Korea, and I was like, oh my God. Right.
And they were horribly mistreated. The Japanese did horrible things to the Chinese and the Korean people, and I mean, So that went on until 1945 when World War II ended, and then what you essentially had was the Soviet Union in the north and America in the south.
Okay.
And basically...
Wait, what was in the north, sorry?
North Korea and South Korea.
What did you say, though? Soviet what?
The Soviet Union.
Right, yeah, sorry.
So Russia.
Yes. Sorry.
So
I'm not great with the flu. I had to make sure I'm following.
Exactly the same thing was occurring in Germany at the end of World War II, where you had the Berlin Wall, and you had essentially Germany divided into two, and America on one side and the Soviet Union on the other.
So that's what's happened in...
Exactly the same thing where the American side of Germany prospered, just like South Korea prospered, because what essentially happened is they embraced capitalism and free and open markets, and so what you have right after World War II is you have the Korean War.
Right, okay.
So,
I've heard of that, but I'm so unaware.
Which is basically a proxy war between America and the Soviet Union, fighting each other to a stalemate where they draw a line.
And
that's not... So Korea was just Korea, and it wasn't until I think 1953 is when the line was drawn.
I'm learning so much today.
So if you go on YouTube and look at North Korea, the architecture is very Soviet inspired,
of course,
and Americans have leaned way more into the Americanization. Because they've embraced free markets, and now there was a lot of problem with corruption, and they've took a lot of time to weed all of that out. Yeah. But I mean, I've been to South Korea twice. The city is as magnificent as any city you'll find in the West. Like Seoul is gigantic.
That's the capital, yeah.
Yeah,
because I've heard of that a few times.
Yeah. And it's amazing, but it is also starkly contrasted by very, very, what appear to be very poor areas of Korea. They don't have a safety net like we do here in Australia. The bottom class, the poor, the old, I mean, they don't get a pension like... I think even in Parasite, the guy living in the basement says he doesn't qualify for the pension. Yeah. It's quite difficult to get.
There was a few things he was saying.
They don't have the government programs that we have because they've, I suppose, embraced. And that's what capitalism does. It raises everyone up, but you also get a real divide in the earnings of people. You get a real class division. So you don't have that class division in North Korea. Well, you do. The government officials are the ones in power, and everyone is poor.
It's a different.
So it's not I mean, I would argue that embracing capitalism, if you look at North and South Korea, there's no argument. It's better to have free markets, have people control their own wealth, their own capital, because the alternative is the government control it, and then you end up with North Korea, which is essentially tens of millions of people in a hostage situation. They're prisoners and they can't go, they can't leave. Whereas South Korea...
unimaginable. I can't really fathom it.
All you need to do is look at a satellite map at nighttime of the entire Korean peninsula.
Are you able to do that?
Yeah.
Can I just Google it?
Yeah, Google.
The internet.
And you will see, you see where the border is, and you see Korea is just this bright, shining light of buildings, and then North Korea is just dark.
That's so
just weird. Dark. They're stuck in the 1950s still. They haven't moved past that point. God,
can you imagine?
So
They even have coloured kid TVs.
But-
my first thought was like, oh, the 50s, fuck that.
yeah, and I mean, North Korea really is truly the last remnant of the Soviet Union that we still see existing to this date from the 1950s, and it's just been passed down from Kim Il Sung to Kim
Whatever.
Jong Il to Kim Jong Un, I think is
Yeah,
the
that
three.
all sounds-
So from grandfather to father
Yeah,
to now
same.
this, and we're at the
shit.
point now where this kid has just been born and raised into this.
Yeah,
He's as
Joffrey style.
indoctrinated
Yeah.
as everyone else.
Yeah, that's so weird.
So they're all prisoners of their own weird design, and it's awful.
Is that like, because they said there's like a bit in the movie where she's like the old parasites they've got the power. So it's like new
This
family.
is like a North Korean missile.
Yeah.
So
He's
there's
like,
an-
I've got the North Korean, and he kept. It was very like, I remember being like, oh, like this feels.
So
I don't know, maybe-
North Korea have nuclear weapons. South Korea
yeah.
don't.
Right.
So even though South Korea is prosperous and have huge cities and everything like that,
There's like that.
at the push of one button, North Korea could wipe like a majority of South Koreans out because they're so close. No one would be able to stop them.
Before, yeah, because I remember a while ago, there was like a big thing with like, I don't know, I'm getting too politics, with Trump and like the
Yes.
bombs, all that stuff.
He was trying to denuclearize them, but essentially
They
North.
threatened, but then there was a lot of, could they really?
We're on a continually repeating side. To get political for a little bit, because
Yeah.
all North Korea do is extend their hand to shake and then rip it back. And then extend their hand and then rip it back. And then extend their hand and then rip it back. And they constantly do this to keep, I guess, everyone on their toes, make people believe there's the glimmer of hope that we can work this out, which Trump fell for.
Right, yeah.
And I don't even think it was a bad thing that he was trying. I mean, we want to denuclearize this totalitarian government that has 70 million South Koreans under a weird hostage situation where they can wipe Seoul out with the press of a button.
Is that like, I mean, I know when you go to South Korea, not necessarily going in and asking the people, your political
I
views.
did. No, I talked to them.
Oh, okay. Oh, 'cause
they
I was
feel
gonna
horrible
ask,
for the
like-
North Koreans. They feel bad for them.
Right, because I was going to ask, in terms of that, like, is that kind of, because in both films, we won't get too much in The Handmaiden, that basement is quite different. Very, very different, in fact. But they both had basements as, like, plot points, which made me go, like, I mean, obviously, 2 out of the thousands of South Korean movies, obviously. I've only seen, like, 10. But, like, that basement thing, I was like, is this, like, something that all rich families do have? Do they all have a basement that's kind of there in case of the North Korea attack? Is that like quite a common thing?
That's possible. I'm not too sure.
Because that thing, he was like, he had it in the house, the basement, but then he said he was ashamed of having it, so he didn't even let the Parks know. Because that means they weren't aware, so they were able to use the basement. I mean, obviously that's for story, because if the Parks did know, you couldn't hide in the basement. So I understand that.
Yeah.
But I was also kind of curious. I didn't do any Googling, because I don't really like thinking. Well, I love the ideas of these things, but then I get too heavy in the politics. If I'm Googling about North Korea, I'm just going to get all
this Parasite is definitely way more just South Korean politics than it is North and South.
Yeah, right.
So the South Korean politics of it are the class divide
in
caused
South
by
Korea.
the prosperous and I mean the capitalist system is that everyone controls their capital, and the end result of that is that very few people become very wealthy, and a lot of people are left at the bottom.
A thing I found really interesting, maybe to go kind of bore deep into the film again, I thought, you know when you're first watching something and you're like, okay, like this is happening now. It was like the ending of Parasite reminded me kind of, I mean, just go back to last time we were talking about Joker, it was like, oh, Batman's his brother, don't do this. And it wasn't like, is it? Ooh, this is the story. It was like, don't do that. Ooh, I don't like. At the end of Parasite, the dad's become the parasite again. He's hit the buttons on the thing. He's done the not sign language. What's the?
A Morse code.
Morse code. He's done the Morse code. He's doing all that. And then we get this montage where he's like, one day, I could be a doctor. I could be this. I could be this. But you know what I'm fucking going to do? It's not about this is that. It's about money. I also think that's kind of the feeling of the film. The poor people, they want this stuff and they think money will get it. So they need the money. But the money's not worth it because you're going to end up in hospital with the Joker laugh.
Yeah.
I feel like we've talked about it a lot, and I was just like thinking, like, I just want little bits because last week I just forgot that one bit about Joker. I was like, little bits. What do I think? I think my favorite fucking moment in the first half is when it's like really ramping up, this is just a fun heist romp and they're just trying to get into this family and get jobs, and it's just kind of a joyous romp at that point, which is so different from the back half, is the bit where it's like the music's building, it's like and they're like trying to like hype up that the maid has got the TB or whatever, and they've got the peaches. They're like blowing the peaches on. It's like the music's building, and then when they've got the pizza, and like we need an idea, and it's like and the blood is hot sauce, and then that bit was like, if you get the chance, this will be the icing on the cake.
And he kind of turns.
Yeah, the way he looks, where he squeezes it down, and he's just like, oh no, and the blood on the thing, and he's just like, oh no, and the mum's just like, oh no.
She just closes her eyes.
Oh yeah, she's like. She like faints or whatever. I was like, there's like, I don't know what I'd call it. There's a height of something that I find so fucking funny. I actually don't respond. I'm just in awe. And this movie had that moment where he just did that. And I'm like, what am I watching?
And you're kind of like, this poor woman.
But also, I just love this family.
Yeah.
Also, a thing that I thought was so good. And it's a simple thing of like, it's the simplest thing, not the simplest, like sometimes things are so clever because they are like in a simple way, but it's also just, you shoot at something and you could just not shoot it that way. It feels simple when you think about it. But what I thought, when I first finished the movie, I was like, holy shit. I was messaging my brother, I was like, I'm going to message him a few words because I was saying, we'll do a phone call at some point, but I'll message him real quick about what he thought. And I was just like, the smell. It was like what I wanted to get out first. And I love that we talked about that first. And what I'd fucking forgotten until right now is the fucking film starts semi-basement. You see the street, and so you see half street and then half under the street, so you get the sense we're damn dirty. But what is in our vision in the house? The first thing, smelly socks hanging. They're just sitting there, reeking their little odor, and then we pan from the socks down to him looking for the Wi-Fi. And I just remember as soon as it started the second time, I was like, smelly socks. And I just something about that was like, that is the only way you start this movie. It's so fucking good, and because I think that's the crux of like everything is just these poor people trying to fight and get their way in, which is so like...
The production design is, I mean, everything we see is a set. I mean, the house is a set, the whole outdoor area is a set. I mean, half of the house is like blue screen, which is crazy. Like the top half, when they shoot outside, like the house is like CGI.
So you've seen some behind the scenes?
Yeah, I have. So they did shoot
I can't imagine
They shoot it outside on a lot in the daytime. So they got the real sun.
So going up to that house, that's not a house they found at all.
No,
not even the exterior.
None of it. They built all of it. Even
perfectly crafted.
Even the window in the living area is designed to fit the 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio of the film, so that when it was framed, it feels literally like they're looking into a cinema outside. But the whole thing was built. The whole, semi-basement they live in was built. The whole street outside was built. Right. Only half that street was built, and then that's blue screen as well. Really, yeah. So that first shot, half of that is CGI, and you can't even tell because it's partially out of focus. Yeah. But like I said, having been to Korea a couple of times, it is absolutely a perfect encapsulation of the poorer people do live in areas like this. And the rich people live in these like hilly, gated, everything feels very segregated. There's some really beautiful like old areas that we went to sightseeing in Korea, and there are a lot of houses like that, like these winding kind of roads.
It was a weird kind of concretey world until you get into the house, and it was just all green.
And that's exactly what it's like. Yeah. It's very, and that's all a set, and it's all, it's crazy.
Because we talk about this one of the others, but like the flooding sequence was when like I first thought like there's just a wide shot at the end. I remember rewatching this time and it's kind of separate, so just the wide shot could have been a separate. I just remember being like, it's flooded. They just, there's a bit where they're just walking, they just flooded the street. I just remember being like, but you're not allowed to just flood streets. Yeah. Like you just, and I was like, and it's not sewage water. So it's not like they've probably ruined these houses, but water up to that level, that would ruin a house. What if we flooded this house? We'll fuck it up, man. Really badly. Like, and I was just like, whose houses are they? They're not letting you do that. How much are you going to pay them? And I was like, so it's a set.
And they used a lot of recycled real materials from, like, they went and got signs and things.
To make it feel so real. Because it feels, I mean, I guess like I just think I'm so into the film that I'm not like, this house is set, but so many things are sets. It's just when you fully when a film is just so realistic, house and house, I forget that, of course.
Well,
Of course, you're going to set up a set. It'd be easier to shoot as a set as well. You can get rid of parts of the house you don't need to build. And
Camera can move freely.
exactly,
Yeah.
you can build it the way you structure. Because in the house, you've got like the table, and then you've got that staircase, and then the kitchen.
Yep.
You've got a lot of times when like something's happening, like when the son first gets killed, and then the parasite walks out, and then the rich daughter walks down. She's like,
Kevin.
"Where is he?" And then she goes. It's just the framing of it all was just beautiful, like the way they were able to create 3 levels. So of course, why spend years, whatever, searching for a fucking house that they haven't just built?
I'm pretty sure the director even said he was really bummed out when they were tearing it down at the end because he's like, "This is amazing." We built this.
But yeah, that's awesome. I think maybe I'm out of thoughts of Parasite, at least for now.
Is it the best picture of 2019?
Best picture?
Yeah, well, it won Best
Oh,
Picture
yeah, it won
at the
Best Movie
Oscars. So I'm not sure that I would say it's my favorite film of 2019, but I'm also super happy that it won, and I'm glad that so many people are talking about this, and this will pump more money into Korean cinema, and there are so many.
We'll get to see these guys' other films.
Yeah, and there are so many fantastic directors working and TV shows being produced, and I mean, even on Netflix, there's a Korean zombie show called Kingdom, which season 2 is almost, which is coming out.
Is that the one you were talking about at some point?
Yeah, I recommended it to you. I thought you would dig it.
I should check it out.
But there's a lot coming up and I mean, they've been making great movies for a long time, but it's great that they got this recognition, and I'm excited to see what he does next.
I think that I remember when all the films came out, because I don't give a fuck about the Oscars. It really doesn't make a difference who wins. So part of me is like, yeah, it's sick they won. But I was also thinking of all the films that are out, I remember being like, I think I've seen all of them, but I'm going to say Lady Bird, but it's not that. Little Women. I haven't seen Little Women. And I think I've seen every single other one, but I can't even remember what they are. I think it's probably my favorite, but I don't know. It's every time I watch a new film, I'm like, oh my God, it's so much better. As soon as we started doing this pod, I'm just every time I watch a movie, I'm like, man, this movie, I think it's just a movie I like. If I see something again, the most recent thing I've seen is usually something I like more. I probably liked Marriage Story more when I saw that initially compared to this. But that's because it's what's in my mind. It's what I'm thinking about. The actors, the choices, all that.
And you're
then I'm thinking
digesting
about Parasite. I'm like, this director's amazing. And then I watch Snowpiercer. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm looking at images from Okja being like, I remember not thinking that was the best, but this looks like the best. You see Jax Keiran, who looks like a wild card there. I barely remember him being in it.
Well, that was one interesting thing I found about this movie, was that Bong Joon-ho was headed towards this very interesting path of melding East and Western cinema. We were getting Hollywood actors in big budget Korean films, and Okja, I believe, was produced by Netflix.
Yeah, it's a Netflix
So all
film,
of these things were kind of converging.
Snowpiercer is mostly American, but then he's still got MVP of all these films. I actually thought on my drive here, I need to Google his name, and I haven't. Do you know it? The dad?
No, I don't. Yeah.
Insert his name here.
Yeah. He deserves the...
He's awesome, but it's also Bong
Joon-ho. Yeah.
Joon-ho. I just find the way their letters and...
Yeah, they all have 3 names.
Yeah, I think maybe it's that they find it hard to place, but
But yeah, it was interesting that we were getting this meld of East and West, and then he took a step back and then made a just purely Korean film.
Yeah, true.
And I wonder if that build up, kind of eased people into his films. He's the guy who's done these other things you like, so now you can go and watch this, and that's what.
Yeah, he made Okja and Snowpiercer, American movies. I mean, not that they aren't fully, but they're speaking.
They're right. Yeah,
they speak English, and I mean, Snowpiercer is the most American movie ever. You did cast Captain America as the lead role. You've got John Hurt. It's like Tilda Swinton. You've got some very American. I mean, they could all be English. It doesn't. That's not my point.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
John Hurt might be English. No,
they're Hollywood actors.
They're Hollywood actors is my point. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, no, I'm trying to think about other films. I fucking love this film. I'd probably like Uncut Gems, if all the films that I think might have been better in terms of Best Picture,
right?
Is The Lighthouse. I think there's a big argument for it as being a better film, just in terms of I don't know. That film as well though has one sequence in it. Oh no, actually, I'm not going to say it all.
Yeah,
I was going to relate to something else, but I won't.
I haven't seen it, but we're going to do an episode on it. I think
That movie's fucking sick, but also like this way is way more accessible. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like if I was going to ask my mum was like, I'm going to go see a movie. Would you recommend something that's out? I'd be like, Parasite. I don't think I'd recommend The Lighthouse.
Yeah.
Oh no, what am I
Very
talking about?
niche,
She'd love that, but that was a bad example.
Yeah.
If a guy on the street comes up to me, what do I watch tonight? I'm going to watch Parasite or Lighthouse. I'd be like, check out Parasite. You're going to like that more, I reckon. I don't know, maybe not.
has broader appeal.
Yeah.
The message. I mean, I haven't seen Lighthouse, so I don't know, but it's. I guess the message in Parasite is quite universal, even though it's very Korean.
Yeah, and it's very like, I think the way it builds, where it's like it's this one movie doing this one thing, and they have a fucking dinner party celebrating that we've done this movie, we've done it, and then the movie's like, now here we go, and it just turns, but nothing about it was like, it wasn't like, you know, like From Dusk Till Dawn, it's like, we're just two hitmen trying to get to Mexico or whatever, and then it's like, we're at a bar and now it's a vampire horror movie. Yeah. And it's just like, and it's in a lot of ways. I mean, I love that movie, but I saw that as a kid, so I have no idea how I feel about it now. But that movie is just two movies that he just went, oh, now it's a different genre. Yeah. This one is a totally different genre. It switches, but it doesn't go, oh, just switch it and just throw all the plates in the air. It just descends and you just follow down to the basement and it just opens up into a different more. It's just more and different. It doesn't feel like it switches like a harsh genre change or anything, which I think is really clever because I can imagine if I was trying to do this, I might try and make that turn even more jarring and really switch it up, which I think, I mean, everything can work, but I really like how this one handles that.
What did you think of Handmaiden?
The Handmaiden.
The Handmaiden.
The Handmaiden. Well, I had heard like a lot about it without hearing fucking anything. So like when you don't know something about a film, but like people are like, watch this film. Like for instance, someone was like, watch The Handmaiden. Probably you. And I had no idea. South Korean. Like, this means nothing. And subtitles, but that's it really. And then someone online was like, like the Parasite, like I'd rather watch The Handmaiden if I'm going to watch a poor person infiltrate a rich family. I think this one is more poor infiltrating the rich in terms of when it starts out at the start, it's that. Also for this one, I think I want to talk about it by just kind of going through it and how I felt because I had...
Yeah.
I want to say there's 3 twists, but I had 3 twists and 3 reactions to those twists in terms of what I felt like was happening until they happened, how I felt after. But yeah, so I had the general idea, it's like, okay, rich being infiltrated by the poor. And I'd seen the poster, which has got the 4 main characters, pretty much just 4 characters. There's
secondary,
but I can forget about them. The 4 main characters all performed fucking exceptionally. I love the 2 female leads so much. Oh my god, their performances were sick. And the poster's got like this weird thing where halfway through the review I was like, I need to go get some food. Oh no, it was dinner, and I didn't eat dinner, but like I didn't have to. I chose to eat dinner, but it was like I stopped it and I came back and like the poster was there on like a screen thing of just images on my thing. I was like, it's like. I see what maybe it was after the film. And I looked at it and was like, I can see what the poster's doing. But it's like got the 2 men and they're kind of like, because there's 2 men and 2 families. It's like 2 men. And he's kind of like, and the woman's like beneath him. It's kind of a family portrait kind of thing.
And she's sitting.
But she's sitting, but she's kind of like, he's got his hand like on her shoulder or something. And then one of the other woman's like trying to grab her, but she's being pushed away and she's a bit like, ooh, what's going on? And then the other one's a bit like, ooh. And it's just odd. It's like a family portrait. But parts of it are twisted. And once you see the film, you're like, oh, this is that, and that's that. And then that means that, but that means, oh my, it's a fucking wild poster. It summarizes the film perfectly without fucking saying anything. And it didn't ruin anything. And it didn't imply anything in the poster where I went, oh, I see what's happening now because of the poster or anything. Not that I'm like, what's the point? You know, it's just...
It kind of looks boring at first glance, and then when you look closer, it I guess reveals itself.
Yeah, it's a bit like, what am I looking at? It's just kind of, but why are they positioned? It feels a bit off, but because you don't know why, it's not like, ooh. So when it first started, I was like, this is pretty good. I'm like, I like this. This is fun. This is very well shot. It's a fucking gorgeous looking movie. At one point, there's a big wide with a tree. And I was like...
the big cherry blossom?
The big cherry blossom. I was like, fuck me, that is... It looks so good.
Yeah.
So many of the shots just look like, There's one bit where I was like, I don't think I'd ever seen 3 or 4 shots string together like that made me feel so like romantic and runny away. And I was just like, this person had ruined both. It was like infiltrating the rich with the poor. And I was like, okay, it's going to be this one thing. And it's exceptional. Like the way it looks is gorgeous. Every single frame of this movie is stunning. Like even some of the stuff where I feel like you could shoot it anyway and you'd be doing that scene anyway, you'll know what I'm talking about. He shot it in the most artistic, beautiful, clever, like we're often seeing things again and things like that. And it's not just shot where we'll just see it from this angle. It's like
they've reframed and
recontextualized everything. The level of like attention to detail in the things that don't necessarily matter. Like there's a point where we're switching the characters, maneuvers and this and that, and 2 characters having this conversation with me so different at this point in the film. It's kind of out of nowhere almost. Not out of nowhere, but it's like, oh my God. And they're framed in this like those sticky trees. It's like, not sticky trees, but those trees with pines and like needles. And they're just everywhere. And then like, and then in the corner is his face, like mixed all these thorns. And it's just,
and the sun's coming through behind and he's smoking and there's a little
so,
bit of...
like clever with the things and then the way it's like, everything about it looking wise looks gorgeous. And the story is fucking weird, man. Like it really took me by surprise. I was just like Parasite, I was like, okay, is this like infiltration? Are there spies involved? And I know this one's the handmaid, so it's like a handmaid. A handmaid's going to a rich person's house to be their handmaid, but they want to fuck them up for some reason. Why? I don't know. And so the movie starts out and I'm like, okay, here's our little poor girl and she's doing the things and she's in the family and I'm like, okay. And then the first scene where I was like, this is not going to play out how I thought, is what I'd like to call dentist porn. Because there's a scene which is just a highly erotic dentist scene where she files her tooth down. That's what's happening, right?
Yeah.
She files her tooth down and it's essentially like as close to fucking as you're going to get. She's in her mouth and it's slow. There's a point where like the acting in this I felt was so good because there's moments where like they're doing this and it could almost be a bit silly, but like their eyes connect. And because she's in the bath and she's like, oh, my tooth's all pointy. This handmaiden is there. That's what she does with rich families back then. She's like filing the tooth down and then they catch eyes. And then her eyes shift down to her boob and it's just a shot of them. And it's something like, okay. Like, it's like, it wasn't like, ooh, sexy. It was like, oh man, this is what the film is going to be about.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't expect this. Like, this rich lady is going to fall in love with this handmaiden. Even though this handmaiden is here for something. At this point, I don't think we'd realized yet what she's here for. But I was like, okay, this is interesting. And the passion there, I thought was like, so interesting. Because so many times you're looking at it different ways. And I'm like, but at the start, I was like, whoa. I didn't expect that dentist scene to be so like sexual and just sexually charged in a really passionate, like I was feeling it. Felt palpable. It was really well made. And I was like, wow, okay, this is what it's going to be like. And then either just before or just after this bit, the movie's like, all right, here we go. It's when the Count arrives, the first male of the film. And one of the 2 males is the Count and the uncle. I love everyone's names. The Count, the uncle.
Yeah.
It reminded me of reading the guy who made The Fox. Oh, fuck. I want to call him D.H. Lawrence, but that's not it. He used to make really like kind of intense like, and you look at them now and they kind of feel like gross and misogynistic and I could be totally misreading all that stuff. It just reminded me of this Reddit book I read in year 11. It just has that same kind of, the Count and the uncle and they're very, I don't know, strong figures of what they are and the film feels very, but yeah, that's a book I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But this guy arrives and then you're like, okay, he's this. I see what's happening here. And then suddenly they have this scene together alone. And it's the first whoop of the film, which has like 1,000 of them, which was such an absurd moment where he's suddenly just like doing cartwheels around the room. And then she turns to him and she's like, you thought I was this with the coin, but flick. And she flicks the coin at the camera. The camera's like, and it like pauses and then like it cuts back. And I was like, what is this, a Guy Ritchie film? So weird, like the way she's like, I'm actually a street urchin, and I was doing this, and doing trades with baby, and I was like, yeah, you take the Korean out of this and put English guys being like, lad, boys, blah, and this is like how Guy Ritchie does a film. I could be wrong, but it's just, I don't know, it's like that weird like, hey, how did I get into this crazy situation?
Well, the movie is really just a series of, we watch things play out, and the audience has one contextualization for it.
This is what it is.
And then it is reframed by adding, say, a scene before, and then we rewatch, and then we get some more information, and then we rewatch. And each rewatch becomes more interesting, more engaging.
So good.
Like, it almost starts out as a straightforward con romance film. You know? Like, she's here to con her, and they fall in love, and now she's not going to con her anymore.
It's not like it's... I was so on board, man. I didn't think Kieran would recommend the South Korean Downton Abbey. I've never seen Downton Abbey, but I have seen images and photos, and there is an image, not the one where they're all like the family portrait 1, 2, 3, 4, but there's another image that I've seen like a lot when I was trying to like looking at the movie and all that kind of stuff, and it's just like, you know, just 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's just man, woman, woman, man. The 4 main characters, they're all just standing there in their elegant old school clothing. I was like, yeah, that's like a fucking image I've seen when they're like, Downton Abbey, next season's coming out, and I'm like, that's not for me.
No.
Yeah, there's lots of, and I know that there's handmaidens and things like that, so it's just like, okay, yeah, a romance, drama, but there's a bit of a con thing going on and a bit of a switcheroo. Oh man. What I thought was so great is that they really did, now just to contextualize, because there was a little bit of confusion, just because...
It's a lot to take in.
And I'm not great at, like, what I thought was that, like if you'd asked me, what's your favorite language to hear that's not English? I was like, it's Japanese. I love that language. And I've often thought maybe it's because I watched, like, anime. Not that much, but I watched some Japanese anime. I don't really watch I don't watch that much German stuff, so I don't hear that.
Yep.
You know, so like I hear the Japanese accent a lot, and I just love how emotional it is when they're sad. I feel the language just is so much more emotive. It feels like it's at 11 to me. Maybe that's just because I can't actually fully understand it. It's translation, so the words. But I don't know. I love that. But in this, I actually couldn't tell when it was from Japanese or Korean. Not fully. Sometimes maybe I could, but yeah. So sometimes it was that. Like for instance, I want to say that the main girl, the handmaiden, she's Korean. And the lady she went for is Japanese. Yes? Or is she also Korean?
I think they're both Korean.
Because she's speaking Japanese, but then there's parts where she's like, here's our Japanese home, Japanese.
The uncle is like a Japanese fanboy.
But he's Korean.
Yes.
Yeah, because I got confused with that as well. Because, yeah, so there's those things where I felt like, I was like, my idiocy and my like, just...
No. It's
just a lack of knowledge.
Honestly,
part of it, yeah.
Now that, because I've been to Japan and Korea twice, I was able to process. Like, I've been to Japan and Korea twice since I saw the movie the first time. So I almost feel like I didn't really see the movie the same way I saw it now, especially talking to people, because there is so much tension between these two countries.
I would have had no idea about that until this movie's like, like Japan occupied Korea.
Yes.
No, Korea. Wait.
Japan occupied Korea.
And I was like,
a long time.
Because I wasn't aware of when it was set or anything until after the movie. There was even a point like halfway over there, someone's like, get the telephone. And I was like, telephone? What the fuck? What do you mean a telephone? Isn't this set like the 1800s? And then I was like, am I even paying attention to this film? This could be like, is this set now? And then I was lost. So I then had to Google after, and it's like in blah, 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 30s. So I was like, oh wait, that's really recent. Oh, I was not aware of this at all. So there's that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's hard to also, the two girls look so different because she's so pale.
I really thought that I was like, okay, so that's what not what they all look like, but it's like...
I would say that girl, the main, the rich girl, is...
She looks very Japanese, or is that just my brain thinking?
No, yeah. Well, she's dressed, I guess, very Japanese and all of that, but
she's got that pale face.
That, to me, so when she's not all done up, when she's just kind of, in the room talking with her, I would say she looks, I think, more classically Korean.
Right.
I could be what... Koreans are, I guess, paler than most other Asians, from my experience anyway. And that's not to say all of them, but across the board, that was,
Because it was one of those things where it was just like, I felt like I would, I don't know, it was just kind of like, it's a bit confusing. And not even that like, all the Asians look the same. It's like, not even. I just thought, because of the way the film was, I was like, okay, Koreans trying to get into this rich family. So I just presumed she was Japanese. Then at one point I was like, wait, is she not? And I was like, And so I was like, okay, some of that stuff I think was maybe a bit over my head, or I just was hard to grasp. But the actual core of the story, which I think is like, a bunch of people trying to fuck this woman out of her inheritance, her book inheritance. There was a bit in the bit where he's like, I love my books so much. And I was like, you fucking idiot, you love your books. And I was like, dude, this was before movies.
Yeah.
I'd be that guy. I'd be like, look at my book collection. Look at this sweet book. And then the one guy's like, oh, you don't even have the deleted scene. Like, it would be so much better if you had that. I was like, damn, this son of a bitch is like, and I was like, such a weird thing to be like, I'm so fucking glad I was born now. This guy have books. Boring. There's no music. Oh, that's actually, every time I watch a film, this podcast is going to end up me being like, movies are great, but mostly the music is the best thing in the world. The Handmaiden music. So good. So romantic and epic, and it's so romantic in like a swelling, gorgeous, there's a bit where they're just running, and the music swells, and I was so along for it. I was so just, I felt like the breeze was going through my hair as I sit in my fucking room.
That's when it really kicks in too, is when the montage of them.
The first montage
to...
when they leave, or the second? Because the first one, I think so, I 100%. But it's
I think
totally,
both. Yeah.
It's totally at like in this weird context where when they first leave, like the girl's like, I'm with the count. We're gonna fuck this girl up and steal her inheritance from her pervert uncle, who we don't know is a pervert yet. The biggest pervert in the world.
Yeah.
I thought Old Boy had biggest pervert shit going on, because that shit gets fucked. This director is a fucking man. I was gonna watch more of his films this week, and I'm like, I don't want to.
It's intense,
good.
yeah.
This is good, but fuck, man, it gets grim at the end, like proper, unheard of grim. We'll get to that bit. The basement again. But the grand sweepiness, when they're like running, they're first like, that was the romantic bit I was saying earlier. Like, there's a shot where they're running through and you get the cherry blossom tree. They're gorgeous, bigger than I could comprehend. I guess they're all that big. I have no idea. But I feel like I'd seen a tree that big. I was like, oh, not a tree. But I thought cherry blossoms were actually quite small, like a person, cherry blossom. This tree's like here, you know what I mean? Like, it was just like, oh, this is so grand and epic. And they're running through it that bit. And you see the rope, which is revealed later.
Yes.
I remember being like, it's weird that that's there.
Especially because they had set it up with her pulling it out of the box, so you're aware of it, and then with the aunt.
I've forgotten that first little bit then.
Yeah.
Because I saw that and just went. Do
you remember when she's going through her wardrobe and all her stuff, and then she finds the circle box and like pulls the rope up?
She's like,
oh, okay. So
it's just
the box is like. There's like a perfect rope in a box, the white rope that she takes.
Maybe.
And also, I think the funniest part of the funniest gag in the movie is when she goes to hang herself. She catches her, and then they both admit that they're conning each other, and she just lets her go.
You fucking bitch!
And then realizes and grabs.
In that amazing wide, like such a beautiful wide. I mean, we all shot that film where we did the hanging scene, and it was shot close. It was like shaky cam, shot close, do all the things. I'm happy with it, but it's also one of those things where like getting a wide hanging. I'm just not going to even attempt to do that. Yeah. So whenever I see that now, it's one of those things that really makes me go like, you've put effort in. You've really fucking put effort in, because it's hard, it's dangerous. Yep. And it paid. You're right. That is easily the greatest part of the movie. That is it's such a moment of like hilarious, because that's the moment where like, we've had twist. She's betraying her, but they're falling in love. But twist, the rich lady has fucked her. That was when that twist happens, where she's there and she's like, "We're in the madhouse. We're gonna get you away." And it's like, fuck, like she's fallen in love, but she's still gonna do this. Yeah. Bitch. And then it's like twist. She's fucked on. I was just like, it didn't like, you know when sometimes a twist hits you, it's like for me, it's always, I've never rewatched the movie. I saw some clips on it online this week as well. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to watch this movie ever again. But like Fight Club for me is the ultimate twist movie. Because the whole movie just did everything well, perfect. It just worked for me so well as a movie. And then 2 hours in, it's just like, hey, you're fucking hallucinating the other main character. And I was like, it really blew my mind. That film for me is like, that's the twist movie. Like, The Sixth Sense is one of my least favorite films. Every M. Night Shyamalan film, bad twist. I don't want to get into why, but I could. But Fight Club, it just really works for me. So twist for me is always like, how does it work? Like, is it opening my mind, contextualizing the movie, reshaping as it plays through, you know? Yeah. This was more like, okay, I don't. What?
At which point are you talking about?
Sorry, we're at the asylum.
Oh,
the
and
woman,
she's-
and the
yeah.
woman, the handmaid she's turned and she's looking, and you think that the other lady is kind of moving away. Hideko?
Yeah.
Hideko?
Yeah.
I think and she moves
Suki.
back. Suki, and she's like, she's closer to the asylum now. But I thought that was like, but then suddenly they're like, oh, the lady of the house, and I was like, oh, he's looking at her now, and I saw what's happening, and then it happened. I was like, okay, but it was a bit like, explain yourself. You know what? It wasn't like, it all makes sense. I was like, I'm gonna need maybe part 2, and it's just like boom, part 2. And I was like, oh fuck, I forgot at the start of part 1.
Yeah.
Completely forgot, and I was just like, oh my god, and it's just like, it turns out that this chick I was conning and fell in love with is actually a total bitch. It was just such a like, it felt like I was watching an MTV thing where it was like, and now we go back to Twistville, and it was like, but then, holy shit, does the uncle the line between cartoonish villain and the most evil man ever put to screen is, because I think I want to get to it towards the end, because once we say it, it's I don't know if I want to say anything else, but it has a twist in this movie that is probably the most shocking and in itself horrendous and gross and disgusting, like unfathomably disgusting, but also it kind of transcends to something where I'm like, that's the greatest thing.
Yeah.
That is,
I had a feeling that
I don't know. It's the animal changes it, you know, anything with that kind of animal, I'm like, I'm on board with, but it's like, I don't know, we'll get to it, man. It was really, that's my favorite twist of all time. It's taken over the Fight Club, Mr. Robot. I can't even, but it's not good, it's evil. It's evil, and I hate this guy. But also at the start, he wasn't working for me because he was too cartoonish.
Yeah.
The first scene when this guy also, like, fuck me, it's just like Parasite. This film is breathtaking to look at, but I think this film is shot better in terms of like every camera movement, every decision feels really well thought out. Just in terms of the sweeping move. Like there's a bit where she's like meets the uncle for the first time.
She's about to enter the library and it goes...
It's a big, long library and we swoop in all the way up to him. And what exactly does he say? Oh, she goes to enter.
And then the
he's
snake.
like, snake! There's the statue of the snake or whatever. And she's like, ah! And then the thing's closed and she's locked out. And then there's that same thing later where his wife...
Is it the wife or is it the
No, it's his
sister?
sister.
Yes.
Yeah, and she's running.
She tries to escape.
She tries to escape and runs down that long book thing. And then the maid just goes, and the gate closes up. It's just all a bit extreme and absurd. And even like his mustache and just the way he looks is almost like a character. Yeah, and he's doing the thing. He's kind of doing that thing where he's like, I'm a bit over the top.
Yeah.
And everyone's, especially because Hideko, so hard when you're just seeing it and you're trying to imagine what it actually says. Like the rich lady, she's playing it very like, especially in the first half before it's revealed who she really is. She's playing it very like, I don't know, like when it's revealed that she's the one playing the player, I was like, what? It's not the character I've been watching, which I think is one of the most.
But when you
see
it all, you're like, oh.
I can't actually think of another film that's just showed me footage from early in the film, and I've really gone. She's different, like the way that she's like, oh, like this and that, and you can see the handmaid twisting this rich person, being like, oh, she's like making her fall in love, and I'll show you how to have sex, and then when we really see it, it's like, I don't know, man. I was like, oh my god, this handmaid's a fucking dumb cunt. Like, she's proper, like, they've tricked her, they've fooled her, like, she's an idiot. Like, she's not bad against her, but she's just so naive and silly. And so when the reveal of the twist and the turn where it's like, hey, this lady's actually been playing you. And I was like, you're gonna really have to sell me, like, proper sell me. But the way it did it was so, like, I don't know, like, the uncle having those scenes where he's like, it's essentially like a porn reading of like the sexy books. And
the puppet.
And all the weird puppet stuff, and like, you know, you see her as a child, she's watching her mum, and it's like it was like kind of a subtle way to like have like a child walk in and be like, your mum's a prostitute. She just brings in men every day. Like I feel like I've seen like in Prison Break, it was like T-Bag, the pedophile character, was like had a rough upbringing. It was like just flashbacks. It was like there was just a revolving door of men, and just, it feels a bit more like. Whereas this, it was way more like weirdly arty and subtle. The way the uncle was kind of like gang raping her with just, but in like kind of more of like a non-literal sense of it.
Like rearing her to be, like that's the metaphor with the peach here, like waiting until she's ripe.
Yeah, I don't know, and just the way that he would have her just, you know, you read these as these men essentially sit here and jerk off in their minds about it, and you know, they all sit like, she's separated away enough so it's like, I don't know, it's just, you know, and there was that one gross people that all go, and this one guy's like grabbing the hat, and he's all like, and just, there was just, you know, and just like seeing.
And then knowing that his intention is to marry her.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just yeah, the whole thing. It's just such a weird, like, I don't know, the way I feel like the uncle's kind of been like, oh, it's a bit, you know, you're just reading a book. It wasn't like I don't know, it just felt like so weird and perverse.
He's essentially a rich Japanese fanboy pornographer.
Yeah.
The uncle.
And he just happened, and it not happens, but he's using these like family members of his.
And yeah, they're using like, women and yeah. I mean, that's a big part of it. I think the whole destruction of the library, when they're ripping all the books apart, and it is really, that it does feel like a, I mean, you know, if you were going to call any movie a feminist movie, I guess you would call this one that. But you don't really hear anyone talk about it in that context.
Which is so funny as well, because I looked at a few things, so I was interested, like, oh, what do people think about this movie? And I was like, the first thing I read was like, everyone said this movie's the best, and everyone but me. And it was like, it's like a writer who's looking at the stance from, she was a lesbian, she was looking at it from that stance, and she fucking did not really like the movie at all. And it was such a weird thing to be like, okay, that's interesting. I feel like,
I don't get that. I feel like
I don't even almost see it like,
I feel like they're always complaining about not being represented, and this movie.
Well, one of her issues was it's like 69ing and these things are a thing, but it's so just, we were talking about male gaze and all those things, which I thought was interesting because as I was watching it, I wasn't like...
She's looking at it through the frame of the male gaze though. Yeah. But she's a lesbian looking at two lesbians having sex. Is she not doing the same thing a man is doing?
Yeah, because I thought what was really interesting is the way that like he was just like, I'm going to go for broke. And like when we see this sex scene, I'm just going to fucking like... I'm gonna show like it for ages, and it's gonna be really passionate. It's gonna be really like overly sexual, and I'm gonna show both naked bodies like for ages on screen. And I don't know. As I was watching it, I wasn't like, maybe I should pause and have a wank. I was just like, oh my god, like the emotion, I was just along for the ride, and I was falling in love with these characters as they all fall in love. And especially the first time, I kept being like, why are you gonna betray her?
Yeah.
And so then when the twist is like the other girl's betraying, I'm like, but why would you kind of fall in love with her? And then the twist that they have fucked over the guy and they are in love, and it has kind of, and what's so great is that the male's like, I've come in and I'm gonna make you fall in love with me, and I'm gonna steal your book and take you to my house. Then I saw your eyes, the eyes that couldn't love anyone. But then she falls in love with the handmaid. It's just, I love that. It's like the idea that this, I don't even see it as like, well, she's gay, so she looks at a man, doesn't think. I just saw it as, she sees everyone in the world and doesn't fall in love with them. But then she met that one person she does, and I thought that was so beautiful, and like, I was really like, felt it, which was, I think the second twist of the asylum was a bit just like, I don't think this is the read I was getting. But then when you realize it's this, and then it's like, it's building, but then she hangs herself. I was on the cherry blossom, I'm like, I'm so confused at this point. And then she's holding her there, I'm like, oh my. And then she's like, I was going to betray you. And then she's like, oh, you thought you were the conner. I was the conner. The conner.
I think she even says, I won't say sorry because you were doing the same to me. Yes. And I was like, that's,
really great. And then they both have that moment. And then we get this, my favorite part of the movie, where you get the romantic getaway to the man on the rowboat, the count on the rowboat, which was so beautifully shot the first time. But then this time, I'm so glad I remembered. Sometimes I feel like I'll forget my favorite. This is my favorite. No.
This is one of...
The shot in the basement. The reveal of the basement is truly the greatest thing in the world. But that's all. That's beyond. That's like...
That's Jax-centric.
That's very personal. Like, that's just such a good use of that kind of creature. I was like, oh my god. And then later being like, wait, oh my god. But the best little character bit in terms of like, I just love little moments that make me go, they're in love. That's it. I just love it so much. And I think it's such a, for me at least, looking at it, it's like such a, usually it'd be like the male doing it to the female. So I think maybe it is a feminist thing. Who cares?
I don't like looking at anything through the lens of that.
I just saw it as this beautiful romance thriller, and it was fucking. My favorite bit was like they're running away, and this time it's not. Hey, we're running away, but we're gonna twist each other, and then but it's like it's this lady, but then it's like we're together now, and then the bit is she's running, and then there's the wall, and the rich lady stops. And what's her face comes back. She jumps out, and the music's going. There's a building.
Stacks.
And then she stacks the suitcase up, grabs the suitcase, and then holds the hand out. And the other lady, who's so elegant, just wow, I don't know. And then when she gets up there, and we get to this big shot where she's just there in this huge wide shot, beautifully framed. And she gets up there, and she jumps down, disappears out of frame, and then boom, sweeping shot as they're running and just giggling, uncontrollable giggling.
It's just the first time either of them have been free, you know?
Happy.
Yeah.
And the rich lady, that's when I was like, I don't know, she was so like, and then we get the shots where like, you know, you get that later reveal where she's like masturbating and the count's just watching, and then she stabs herself in the blood. Because that first time, when it first reveals that the blood's there after they had sex, I was like, this movie's we're getting into the rapey, like, this...
Yep.
Because I remember you saying, this film is intense, and I was like, well, it's Downton Abbey so far, and okay, now we've got rape, and okay. I know what this 2 hours is going to be, there's going to be madhouse stuff. Not that I wasn't not having fun, but I was like, okay, oh no.
I hope it doesn't go this way.
Yeah. I don't know, it's going to be a bit too much. But then, like, the twitch is masturbating, and it's like, see her maneuvering. But then the next time we see that, where... she's like, the count's outside and the music's swelling, and she goes and they kiss passionately, and she like pushes her away, and then she goes outside and she's like, you need to treat her, you flowered her, you plucked the flower, you need to replant it, and whatever. And it was just, and then you see her giggling, and it was just like, oh, this is all working so well. Just so good. And then when we get to this fucking third act, I can't even, what is happening when the count and how does she get out of the asylum? I was going to rewatch the end because I was thinking about that and I forgot to just check.
And she picks the lock and gets out.
That's right. And that's why I forgot, because there's that bit where she starts picking her lock in the fight, and I'm like...
And she had the pin?
Yeah, and I was like... And she's got the pin from the start. And,
yeah.
But also super convenient to be able to like pick a lock and just escape an asylum.
Well, no. She is a pickpocket. I mean,
oh my god!
Remember? She's like a jewel expert and all of these things. Like the first thing we ever see her do is pick the count's pocket at the start.
And then he's like, hey, you're good, but I'm better. Oh no, I'm wrong. Amazing. No, that's so good. No, I love it. Thank God you're here. Talk shit about this fucking wild movie. That is sick, because that little bit did actually kind of make me go, oh, that's... No, that's perfect payoff and setup. I just actually forgot. It's because it's that part of that Guy Ritchie part of the film where it's like, here's the backstory, it's all a bit wild. And the images, the subtitles I had were really small, so when the images were fast and the dialogue was small, I found it a bit like, I don't want to miss a shot, so I think I missed a bit of dialogue.
My subtitles were perfect because they actually stated whether it was Japanese or Korean, which helped a lot.
I really like that.
You almost process the movie a bit differently when you're able to differentiate, only sometimes can I hear the Japanese. Like I hear terms that I heard when I was in Japan, and I go, okay, they're speaking Japanese now, but it had like JP in brackets and then the text.
That's awesome. I wish my movie had that. So she escapes from the asylum. And then while that's happening, the count and the lady are there, and we've got that horrific moment where she's going to poison him, and he's like, but we're gonna have sex first. And it's like that waiting game of like, how long is the poison?
And he's like, women like it when they're taken.
He just goes full, I don't know, so
is it out of character?
When you were saying before with like Parasite, were there any things wrong? I was like, maybe with The Handmaid, I kind of dislike that, like, because the count says that he doesn't want to fuck her. Well, he does, but then he's like, I don't know, it was kind of like a weird thing. Maybe I'm missing scenes that kind of make it fit more, but it feels like more like, hey, we're here. We need to villainize him 100% so that the murder is like A-okay. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
I don't know. So the easiest way to do that is to make him go, women like getting ripped. It's like, oh, well, now you can't. He's impossibly like unsympathetic now. He's just a fucking cunt. Like,
But in the same way, if we're looking at that scene from the context of his perspective, I mean, he starts the scene by saying, I see your eyes.
Yeah.
These are not the eyes of someone who wants to have sex.
Yeah.
And kind of rejects her, and then comes back, and then she spits the drink in his mouth, which he takes, I think, to mean something completely.
Yeah, well, he's like, oh, this is weird sex shit.
Yeah,
She's
he's like,
spitting shit in my mouth.
I'm into this, and then I'm not. Obviously, he's meant to be the bad guy,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he's not completely irredeemable.
Yeah, I
he
suppose
is.
so. I
I
feel like
don't know. It's a
I
weird
guess as well
thing.
though, when you like twist it to the end, where he does like 10 minutes later, he sacrifices his life to murder the man before he loses his penis. Which
At least I die with my cock.
At least I die with my. I was like, I respect that, man. He doesn't want to get reeked.
Yeah.
No one wants to get reeked. It would be the worst thing. I feel no, so anytime I feel like I wouldn't care if I lost my penis, just the idea of losing, I'm like, no, I don't.
Yeah, no, that life is
Yeah, impossible to imagine. The uncle character though, like when he wakes up, because she poisons him, and you're like, she got him. The poison kicked in before he raped her. Yay for her. And then they go off. She puts on a hilarious costume. I don't know if it was meant to be hilarious, but at the bus stop, she's just got a little mustache, and I felt so much like I was watching like a high school play where they had too many male characters, but there was too many female actresses, so they had to get one of them to be the male, and it just looks a bit silly. Not inherently silly, just something a bit like oddball comedy about it. It was like, I'm in a disguise, to board the boat or whatever. I don't know. It was just kind of funny. But then the Count wakes up, and
it's like two samurai waiting for him.
Yeah, samurai waiting. He laughs, they laugh, and then it pans up, and he's like, "Could you get my pants?" And I'm like, I'm confused. Who are these samurai? They his samurai who are like, you got yourself in this wacky circumstance, let's go get those girls. And there's like, no, okay, they're the uncle.
He's got connections, yeah.
Yeah, because that's what I thought. And there's like, oh no, he's in the car, and then he gets taken.
And then we set the cigarette thing up in the car, which I love, because he pulls all three out, and I'm like, oh, he's going to give these two a cigarette. And then he just smokes them all. And I remember the first time being like, oh, that's weird. And then you see the two blue ones.
Because it's to hide. So he's only got the
So he's got three white normal cigarettes and two blue suicide cigarettes.
And so he's got rid of the three so that the only ones...
And you think, because there's two guys in the car, he gets the three out and he's going to give each of them one, but he just smokes all of them. Yeah.
I see. I didn't do those connective dots, but that is...
He's just trying to burn them out, so because he knows when he gets there, these are the only cigarettes I can have in there, because if he hands me the other one, I'm not dead.
So this movie has a setup and a reveal that often if something is set up, I will be like, okay, you've set this up. You know, you set up a certain thing and you're going to have to pay it off. And if the payoff is less than what I expect, I'm going to be disappointed. Never have red herrings that are better than your twist.
Yes.
That's my biggest issue with twists as well. When they're like, oh, maybe it's this. Like, if anything's ever meant to be supernatural, oh, maybe it's a twist. And then it's not. I'm like, ah. But then sometimes, like fucking Hereditary, the opposite happens. And I'm like, boo, boo. But this, I've never enjoyed something that's this awful before in my life. Like, truly horrific. The bit halfway through the movie where the uncle's going to go away for a bit and he's like, you get 1 week of reprieve from me, but always remember the fucking basement. And I was like, oh my God, what's with South Korean movies I'm watching this week? And basements! Parasite is just a movie that's suddenly like, the basement. And the whole movie changes to the basement. Basement is like, you could call Parasite the basement. Yeah. That's what I would almost call it if I was an idiot, you know? Like,
call both of these.
You could, man. And so that immediately, he's like, in the car, he's like, come along. He's like, there's a basement. I was like, oh my God, what's in this basement? What's in this basement? And then right at the end of the movie, we get 10 minutes where we cut to the basement. And the samurai have taken the Count and the uncle's got him. And the uncle at this point has turned from cartoonish evil to truly despicable and vile. But I think that's because his taunts and his threats, remember the basement, it's like, well, what's in the basement? what could possibly be in the basement that would destroy my soul and make me I couldn't even deal with it. I'm still like, what the fuck? In the basement, he has a giant fucking octopus in a tank that doesn't fit the octopus. So I replayed the shots of the octopus for about 50 minutes. Just again and again, just looking at the octopus. I love squids. I love octopuses. I hate being in the water. I hate going to the water. I hate really seeing the water. I love seeing the water. I love the water so much. I don't like swimming. I don't like being in the water that much. I like pools, but the ocean and stuff, I freak out. Big waves, I hate it. But the idea that in the depths of the ocean are giant squids and things like that. I mean, I like dragons more than anything in the world, really, truly, but squids, like krakens, is my favorite. Like, my two favorite things are dragons and krakens. But krakens for me, more so because, like, there's probably a really big one under there somewhere. Yeah. Truly big. Pirates of the Caribbean 2 is almost better than the first one because there's a kraken in it, because it's visualized well, it's done really well. And in this movie, the squid, like, it's CGI, right? Or is that a squid? Are you allowed to put an octopus in a tank? That was my thought.
The fact I didn't even think about it being CGI or practical,
real, right?
I have to assume, but now that I'm thinking about it,
the way it's tentacle, it's too perfect.
It looks flawless.
It's the best CGI ever put to film, if it is, in my opinion. Honestly, man.
Probably, if it is CGI, it's because of the restraint used in that it's kind of out of focus.
It's always in the background.
Exactly.
I think it's in focus for the reveal, and then it's always just in the background. And it's because there's a bit beforehand where she's like, the basement, the sound, and we get the squelchy sound. My brain would never go to squid sounds.
And there is also the little, you actually see that one of the first books that Suki opens, the pornographic books, is of a squid.
So that,
yeah,
I'm not sure if that actually image.
It's like the first hentai.
The squid is like fucking the woman or whatever. But it's like that. There's a very, very famous Japanese drawing of like a sea lady or sea man or whatever with a squid fucking them or whatever. Right. So I'm pretty sure it's that, just because I was Googling today, just like, so
that is a thing.
Just a quick check up on the octopus, being like, is it a metaphor or something?
Yeah.
Is the octopus Japan? Is the woman Korea? Like, what is it? You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, what is it? But I think it's shorthand for being like, he's like, the basement is where I do evil shit, and we see the squid, and I think people are aware of the image. At least this is what I did for like 5 minutes, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna say my own opinions about the squid because I have a lot to say. But it's like, yeah, we had seen that image, but also if you forgot about that. He's a very devious sexual creature. Like the way he talks to the count, he's like, just the way he's describing the vagina, just like I can't even.
Yeah,
just like,
was it
sufficiently wet and just weird?
What was the viscosity of the?
Just stop saying words like that. Just God, it was like
my hands are like sweaty.
It was like that like boys will be boys talk. It was like,
I don't know.
How was that girl? She was sick, bro. It was just like that, but too detailed, too gross. I don't know. He's in his torture basement asking as well, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
and he's slicing fingers off and
that shot. Because he's slicing the fingers off. I love subtle filmmaking where it's a gross, disgusting torture basement. I'm not 15 anymore, so I don't need to see those hands being actually cut.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling it. There's one bit where it comes down, you just see a bit of blood. But then it's just like, here's a 2-second shot. He just pushes the fingers into the bin. God damn, do they look like good fingers, man.
Yeah.
As just a fan of gory practical effects, like, fuck, they look good. It was just perfectly subtle, beautiful. Like, this guy, like, I've only seen this as an old boy, but fuck me, he's good at just, like, being like, it's just a movie. Also violence, and you're like, no! Put the squid away, bro! He's got, I was about to say, I can't even think of another sexually fucked movie that I love so much. Except Old Boy, because then the other thing would be Serbian film. That's too far. I don't feel like it's not saying or doing anything. Yeah. Whereas Old Boy has that same perverse thing going on at the end where I'm like, no, oh God. But I don't know. I feel like this guy, like, he hits 11, you know? And with this type of thing, 7 to 9, it's just another one of these films that's trying to be too much, but doesn't do it, doesn't know what it wants to be, you know?
This movie made me lose respect for every other movie where there's a reveal and then we backtrack over.
Yeah, because this is the best one.
by a mile.
I actually-
like it's another film when they
The
represent
characters
it.
are entirely different because they're manipulating each other so cleverly, but then that subtle love thing is there.
But rewatching it, it all works. Like, because this was the second time I watched the movie.
yeah.
So I'm processing it all with the forethought of knowing all the
right,
pieces.
from the
And I'm
start,
like,
of course.
everything works. Everything is set up. Everything is there. And everything is kind of available to you. Maybe not all that you need to put it together, but almost enough, you know?
Yeah.
It is, like I said, any other movie that does a thing where we're going to replay over and show you, like Joker, garbage in comparison. I mean, there's only that one little part.
Yeah.
But
that's more like it's not real. That's like
Yes.
That's
That is the worst example of that, I feel like, in Joker, and this is the best example.
night and day for sure.
Even though they're different.
And then the worst thing that Joker is that it's just like, it's like the whole movie fundamentally is like, here's the movie, and then it's like, actually, you were misinformed. Here's what the movie really was, and then it's like halfway through that, it's like, but actually, that was also kind of accurate as well.
You
I
were
love
misinformed, but you also had enough information to put together the
right things.
Yeah,
like they were both twisting each other, but they did still fall in love.
like the first time I saw the movie and they grab her and put her in the asylum, like my thought is, oh my god, of course she's just a dumb. Like, of course they would do it. Like okay.
But then
and then
it's
it
like-
re-go, and I'm like, oh. Yeah,
of course, because fuck that guy.
again.
Yeah,
It's so good.
it really is amazing, and
Not that there's anything wrong with Parasite, but I just feel like this movie is just a tier above it. And you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to knock Parasite down. It's just that
they are such different beasts, though. That
Yes.
in terms of like, because I mean, we watched it together, but it's like, what I love is that you could summarize both these movies with like, they're both South Korean. I mean, obviously there's 100 South Koreans, but it's like, it's two South Korean movies about a poor family or person infiltrating a rich person for their own selfish gains. You can summarize, the synopsis, and when you go in and see a cinema, could be the same.
Yeah.
The same. Little, you tweak it a bit. You wouldn't do that. But it's like, they are just so different films. Like, watching them both together this week, it's like, I don't, like, in terms of, like, comparing them, it's like, one is, like, a grand, epic love tale, like, an epic, like, 30s love tale. Like,
it's
it
a
feels
period piece.
timeless in this, when, like, something's set in the old times. I can see it playing out now. Like, it feels kind of this epic, timeless thing. It kind of reminds me of Outlander, which is, like, this thing where she gets, like, sent back in time to, like, the 1400s or whatever and falls in love with a sexy man. And that, oh my god, we should talk about that later.
I haven't seen that.
That gets so fucked. Edmund Tully from Game of Thrones is like the uncle in this
right.
to the male character. It's fucking, it's whack. But it's got that grand, epic, romantic, but also utterly perverse feeling. Whereas Parasite for me is just this fun romp that then kind of shifts into, I mean, I think I like Parasite more, but I don't know. The Handmaiden's probably better. Just in terms of it really kind of...
Complexity.
It floored me, man. And it does stuff where it's like, if you told me that there was going to be a 10-minute fucking porn scene where two ladies just fuck in really graphic, and I can see how someone was like, it's a bit male gazy, they're like just hypersexual. But for me, it just played so well that I like bought it so well. And then what I loved the second time is when we're seeing that sex scene, we're seeing the other girl manipulate her. So it feels like this time the love isn't there. And the first time we see it, I could be wrong.
She feels innocent and like she's
but the first time they're both sitting on the bench. She's like, "Oh, come sleep with me," and they're both like looking the other way. And then the camera slowly, for like 10 minutes, comes down. I mean, maybe 2 minutes. He comes down and it's intimate. And then that love scene is very intimate, very close, like almost true. I was like, "Oh, geez!" Like, felt like you were there. And then the second time, it's just this weird. You're seeing the same stuff, but it's this weird above shot. And I was like, oh man, I feel like I'm actually, you say, like, you look down the camera, it's like, it makes him look bigger. It's like, this one really made me go, I'm just omnipresently watching because there's no love here because she's manipulating her, it's all fucking bullshit. But then it's not. And then right at the end of the movie when they're on the boat, where you get this beautiful, grand, symmetrical, I don't know, they're
Yeah.
both together, and I just love it's like a close-up of both of them, and they're like kissing, and then it's like cuts to wide, and they're just naked. I was just like, yes, because they would be, it's a private room. I don't know, it's just, it's such
And
a
they're free.
It was such a gorgeous, beautiful ending. I was just like, yeah, fuck yeah, this is all just, also, this is just kind of nothing, but also, right at the start of the movie, the handmaid like looks at the rich lady, and he's like, well, she was just something like, it reminded me of when Frodo's like, no one will believe us if we told them about the elephants. No one will believe us back home. She's like, no one would believe your beauty at home. She says something like oh, what would people say if I brought you back to my house? Like, you're so beautiful. You're beyond anything. I just remember being like, okay, so for context in this film, she is more beautiful. And that's the relationship. Because I found the complete opposite to be true.
Yeah,
Handmaid
yeah.
to me is far more attractive, far more naturally beautiful. And the other lady, just because she's so, like the character is so...
Yeah, ghostly.
Yeah, she freaks me out, and so
Yeah.
I don't find that attractive. Which is just an interesting thing when you're watching something like, okay, she's more pretty, okay. Just because in the world that does matter, like what people think of each other in the world.
Yeah.
If you think opposite or different, it's like you've got to remember to apply that into the film, which I just thought was fun. I love them both so much though. Like I was just flicking through some of the scenes and like just playing with the music because I just that music, and it's just that running scene where they're just giggling and laughing like feels like such a... I felt such relief when it came to that point because it's like there's the bit just before they're throwing the books and ripping the books and...
I feel like I'm the guy that brings up the thing I don't understand every time we have a conversation. So
because often I'm just like, every part of the movie was so good, goddamn movies are good!
there's a moment right near the end of the movie where we get a shot of them in the boat.
Yes, again, and it's... Oh, yes.
And he's out of focus, and it freeze frames,
On them. And
but
then it
slowly zooms. I thought my thing was fucking up because I couldn't remember that from the first time I'd seen
Why
it.
don't you? It's such a weird thing.
Yeah, and I just have no idea what he was trying to say.
So, part of me, because I also was like, what the fuck? But I did just flip through the movie again this morning or last night, just because I was like, I just want to refresh myself just on like, because you know how it's like twist, turn. I was like, you know when you're like, I know what's going on, then you're like, wait, which twist was before which turn? So I just wanted to like frame it on my brain a bit. And I was getting to the end, and then it was just like, you know, just looking at the image and being like, oh, I'll just watch this 5 minutes, why not? And then it got to that bit, and it is really weird, but it comes after he dies. Mm-hmm. So he's dying. So he smoked the cigarettes, and he's dying. So to me, they're his last thoughts.
Okay.
They're just weird. And so for me, I was like,
Right,
is that the
okay.
moment he's regretting? Because it cuts through the movie.
Yeah,
It goes,
yeah.
shut. But then it's because it's the boat scene. But the boat scene's pretty much the end, just before the twist reveal of the asylum and all that.
We see her grab, Suki grabs Hidega's
The arms,
hand.
and then he looks, and then it frees from him. So that's his realization that I should have noticed that.
I got conned.
And then it cuts to him being like, thinking about the fact that he got conned, and then that's him dying, I guess. And it's weird, it's out of focus, and he's remembering frames of things. I actually like it when I was talking about it.
Actually, it reminded me of a really great transitionary shot, 2 shots earlier in the movie where we see the young girl when she sees the basement, and it like zooms in but goes out of focus and then blends into the shot of her as an adult, also out of focus, and then comes into focus.
I don't remember. I think I know what you mean.
Yeah,
Maybe.
It was just, I remember, I'm like, I've never seen a transition between 2 scenes, and it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because it's like
fading from child.
Yeah, it's such a simple effect that you could do with just a crossfade and lining the actors up properly. But
works effectively as
it
fuck.
does.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of later on when he goes out of focus.
Yeah.
Also in that basement.
Yeah, because it was such a... I just realized. I don't know. Maybe I changed my mind. The count sucks because he killed the octopus, didn't he? The rapey octopus. Octopus is probably not intending to rape. But it's like such a fucking weird thing to imagine. Like, what does he like pull the tub over and like push it on? I don't know. It's just the whole thing, and obviously it's like because you've got like the hentai, it's called, and all that kind of like. It's not like an outlandish image that's not been conjured before, but it was just. To fucking see it in a real movie, like, because we hear that squelching sound, and the actual reveal, it looks so good, man. Like, it must be a visual effect though. The way it moves and the way he's talking, he's just being his perverse little uncle self, and he don't even know what's there because of course he's just there. He's got all the fucking dicks and all the jars. That is the fucking.
Yes, I forgot the dicks in the jars.
Oh my god! It's just. It's so close to being too much, but I think it's so well done. Where
it's also just restrained enough.
Yeah, it's not like, I mean, he could have shown a flashback and been like, you want to see the basement? So we're going to show Hideko watching her fucking mom get raped by an octopus.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch that though. I love the implication. I mean, watch it. We're filming. If you're gonna hype up this evil character who has a basement and he's done something in this basement that scars her so deeply, you've got to hit 11 for me. Make me remember this movie, but say something. Don't Serbian film it. And I think this film does that line perfectly. Where
there's restraint where there should be. There's over the line where there should be.
It felt really well crafted, and I think the only other film I've seen this guy, Old Boy, has the exact same thing where its last 15 minutes has some absurd octopus rape levels of fuckery and just depravity and like getting into that kind of perverse part of the human psyche, which is always fascinating and interesting to like delve into, but also can be almost too much. And this guy is able to craft really well-made films. I'm like, I don't want to watch more, but I do.
I haven't. I watched Handmaiden in 2016, and I always recommend it to people, but I also didn't go back through his back catalogue. I've seen Old Boy a long time ago. I need to rewatch it.
Have you ever seen it again?
No.
It's
I don't even really think I've watched it. I don't know. When you really watch, when you really sit down and watch a movie properly versus like watching it with other people.
I watched it with some mates when I was 15, and maybe I was drunk. I don't remember.
Yeah, I just remember the cinematography was what blew me away, and some elements of the story. But yeah, I know if I rewatch it now, I'll be like,
Watch the whole film. When the first 10 minutes starts playing out and he's just locked in the apartment and it's just like, he just goes through that. He's just in the apartment, just being trapped. It's so well made. And it's so good because now there's a fucking atrocious American remake that is just every second of it.
Is that by Spike Lee?
I don't know.
I think
whoever it is the worst director. He's like M. Night Shyamalan levels of bad.
He is the worst director. And he keeps making terrible movies, and people keep saying they're good. Did you see Black Klansman?
No.
It's crap.
Really?
It's complete garbage.
I haven't heard anyone talk about it really. I think my brother likes it.
It's trash. Really? It's especially watching. I think when you watch it, you'll be like, this guy thinks he's a filmmaker, but he's not very. It's the polar opposite of this movie in that it's so like rough and unpolished and amateurish. And
is it weird that I'm worried I'm gonna watch it now? I wouldn't have watched it if you said you liked it.
There are two really good things in it, and that's the two lead performances. Adam Driver and
he's I bet you he's good in Girls, even though that show sucks.
But the movie is garbage. I hate it. I really, really hate it. The fact it was nominated for Best Picture is just ridiculous.
You're offended?
And
crash levels of offended?
Not offended, but just baffled by the decision making that someone could watch this movie and think this is one of the best of the year, and then he tags this political message onto the end of it, which has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. He thinks it does because, I don't know, Americans are really dumb sometimes. No, you're right. It's not Americans. I don't even believe that. I know a lot of great Americans. I don't know why I said that. Everyone is dumb.
You're passionately angry, so you're saying.
Yeah, I'm lashing out at you, America. I'm sorry. I don't mean it. There are fucking stupid Australians. We know a bunch. Everyone's dumb everywhere, and there are smart people everywhere. Yeah. Back to Handmaiden.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I remembered another squid thing I want to talk about. This guy's got a fucking thing for squids. It's real weird. He's got more of a thing for squids than I do. Because I don't know if you remember an Old Boy, and this could be half misquoted, but I think the vegetarian thing I might have just put in my head, but I think so. But everything else is 100% accurate. That actor, I'm pretty sure it's vegetarian, which just adds a little extra wrinkle of insanity to it all. But that's, I don't know if you remember, there's a scene in the movie where he just gets out and he's got out of the fucking, this is Old Boy, sorry.
Yeah.
But it's related, it's the same director and it's Squid related. He sits down at a dinner thing, I think it's just before he meets the girl. Who is this?
Yeah. Yeah.
He eats a squid alive.
Oh.
Do you remember that?
Is it just the legs?
No, bro.
Oh, the whole... No, I don't...
It's like a whole fucking squid. It's all like all tentacly, all like bubbly, and just doing its weird perverse movie. Just
because I know there is a real dish in Japan where I believe squid, like small squid legs, and then what they do is they pour, I think, soy sauce over it.
Comes back to life.
And
I've seen that online. This is
people have died eating that too.
Right,
It'll like suck onto their throat, which means you have to really chew it, and then if you don't. Yeah, I don't want to eat anything where I'm risking my life.
Don't eat squids, man. They're too cool. Like, what the fuck? Like,
They're aliens. Yeah.
Yeah, squids are so good. It's so weird. Just, it don't make sense to me. It's like a snake. I don't understand it when I look at it, but snakes are evil and squids are like majestic and beautiful. But maybe just because I don't go in the water. If I was in the water all the time, I'd be like, oh, I'm so afraid of touching a squid. But the squid, it's like, this big. And I was checking it out today because I was like, this is why I was checking the squid thing. Because I'm like, what's this dude's deal with squids? Is it like the Korean peach thing? Am I just looking at something because we just happen to be watching these two movies that happen to have class stuff in it, kind of, but not really. I mean, no, Parasite's totally like that.
Yeah.
This isn't really. It just
it's hung on the frame of that, but it really loses it quick.
Yeah, it is. But also, I feel like Parasite is like, the poor just what the poor will do to stay not poor is like why all the violence happens at the end, and then there's that smell twist as well. But most of the violence is just to stay there.
Yeah.
And they're afraid of falling back into that basement. So they'll kick people back into that basement so they stay above it. Whereas in this, you have people being like, I love money, I'm rich for money. And then later in the film at the start, when it's like part 3, it's like, I don't really care for money. I just like the idea of being able to order wine without like looking at the menu. And so that's class, but that's not really money. He just loves the idea of what money represents.
Yeah.
Which is totally different in my mind. I could be wrong. But yeah, this dude, in the Old Boy, he just eats a squid. He fully just eats it. I'll show you straight after. It's fucking out of control, man, because it's just like, he just eats a fucking squid. He fully eats it, and in the scene, it's like, he's been locked away for so long. It just works. It's not just like this weird thing, but it's also just this absurd weird thing you totally didn't need to put in. But yeah, I love it. I love this guy. I really want to watch Sympathy for the Vengeance of the Sympathy. Lady Vengeance,
Does he have a couple of English films?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, Old Boy's his most accessible.
And
well-known. Like, we studied that in film school. I went shit film school, but it's like, I imagine if we studied it, lots of films studied.
Yeah.
Films studied. We studied that first 10 minutes and it was like, I remember being like, wow, this film looks good. Compared to all, I remember the teacher, he showed me so many films, he showed me Chinatown and that. And I was always like, I don't understand this guy, because Old Boy's great. And I haven't rewatched Chinatown, but I fucking hate that movie so
Chinatown
much.
is shit.
I hated it more than anything. We had to watch it in the auditorium in class, and I remember sitting there, and it was like 8:30, 10:30 in the morning. I just remember being like, I could have woken up this morning and watched a good movie. Instead, you're forcing me to watch an actor that I've always confused people love, because he just never connects
By
with
a director who is probably a child rapist.
Who? What?
Is it Roman Polanski,
Oh, right,
isn't
sorry.
it?
I was like, oh no, who are you going to ruin for me?
Yeah,
he's the monster.
I feel like most people are in agreement. He's a complete scumbag, and he directed this movie that everyone says is so great.
Boring. Should we pivot this podcast to why Chinatown is boring?
I mean, I've only seen it once.
No, I've only seen it once.
It might be like a Blade Runner, because they both are these noir films where, like, I remember, I think it wasn't my third watch of Blade Runner where it hit me and I went, I get it.
Yeah.
But, and maybe that's what happens here, because, I mean, this genre of film is just by nature very slow and very long and very drawn out, and things that don't seem important come back. But like, I just remember seeing the glasses in the pond and I'm like, okay, that will be a huge reveal. Right. And then it was, and I was like,
there's stuff to do with a dam and he walks around a dam boringly.
Was it so good at the time that people have taken so much from it that we can't even watch it?
The reason I can't enjoy Psycho.
But I can watch Citizen Kane, and I watched that through the lens of, in 2015, I think is the first time I watched it. And I was like, no, this is a masterpiece.
Is it? I have not seen it.
Oh, it is. It's one of the greatest films ever made. It's also I believe, if not one of the first films ever presented in a non-linear fashion. Which, when you know that, you're just like, oh my god! I mean, I didn't know the twist as well.
I don't say.
Yeah, so the fact that a film in the 1940s surprised me like it did. I mean, Citizen Kane. Yeah, I loved it.
Is it Citizen Kane or Casablanca where he's like...
Casablanca.
Honey, I don't give a damn.
That's Casablanca.
I think that's the
I
one
don't stick my neck out for nobody.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a feeling of a lot of old films that just doesn't vibe with me. I mean, it's some weird thing.
Citizen Kane is like a movie that is 20 years ahead of its time. Like so much so that people didn't even realize it was great, I think, until the French discovered it in the 60s.
That for me is like a sign that it probably is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like people are like, no, it doesn't work for me. Like, my biggest one is Starship Troopers. As a 15-year-old dumb fucking cunt idiot that I was, you know, like, I watched that movie fucking by myself, fucked out of my brains, and I understood it perfectly. It's so obviously a satire, a parody of these insane things. I joined the army, then a child's like, I joined too, and they're all like, it's just, they're squashing bugs, but it is so absurd. It is so fucking perfect. That is still one of my favorites of all time. And every time I see it, I'm just like, how could I get this at 15? And it came out when it came out, and everyone's like, this fascist pro-war movie. I'm like, you're a fucking idiot. You're an absolute fucking idiot. Are you retired? How do you not? And it's like, it was too good for its time. Everyone was too dumb. They weren't ready for it. I actually can't believe that, because it's not that old. But yeah, it's kind of reminds me of that. But it's, as you were talking about, like, Citizen Kane, like being able to look back, I think that's one of the things. I've never rewatched Psycho, because I watched it once, and because I knew the twist, I didn't like the second half. I knew everything.
I don't think you can watch Psycho just living amongst popular culture.
Yeah, because it wasn't just The Simpsons and things. It's just so interesting how those films, and it's like one of my favorite things. And like, you know, as I was writing my first feature script, and I still haven't finished, but it's like it fundamentally, the first thing was gonna have a switcheroo halfway and do the Psycho thing, which in Psycho doesn't work for me. But you know, once was my favorite thing. Game of Thrones did that 3 times in the first 4 seasons, and it worked every time. Like the twist of being like, hey, he's not the main character. Whereas in Psycho, I just remember being like, because I knew that she wasn't. I knew that she was going to get the bathroom scene. It just, it's a weird thing. It just never worked for me. But I would love at some point to rewatch that movie. Maybe I should watch it with Citizen Kane.
Oh yeah.
Watch a classic old film and see what I think. Because it's so weird when you mentioned Citizen Kane. I was like, fuck. There's so many really old classics that like I just haven't seen. So I'm just like, I don't know.
Well, it just got knocked off the that list of greatest movies of all time.
Yeah, so I always, when I was like 15 to 18, I was like, oh, I'm a cinephile. My least favorite word. Never gonna use it again. But I fucking love films. I love movies. I love storytelling. And I was just like, okay, so gotta watch the best westerns. So I watched like the top 10 or got through the list, you know, online, and then they're like, I'm gonna get through this. And so there's a lot of like classics. Like I remember watching The Exorcist and like the original Omen and stuff. That has a crazy ape scene in it. That is.
Yeah. The original Omen is.
Yeah, and you can't shoot shit like that with apes anymore. That blew my mind. So there's old films that totally work, but for some reason, Citizen Kane and Casablanca were like too above. That was just like, no, that's what boring film teachers who fail.
Yes.
That's what they like. Because they're old and boring. No.
Yeah.
Maybe I will though, because you're talking about Citizen Kane, and I was like, oh, that.
I watched it outside.
I didn't know it was the first non-linear thing.
I did watch Casablanca at school when I was doing literature, I think in year 11 or 12. And I was like, oh, this is good. I get why people appreciate this. It is a product of its time.
I'm sure it's a good movie in like terms of technically. Like it probably will be.
It's just like it's just hard to, I don't know. It's like opening a can of soft drink that's been closed since the 80s. You know, you're like, oh.
You opened it and then it kills you.
Yeah, that's Casablanca. where
I'll watch
Citizen
it 2 minutes at a time.
Kane was perfectly preserved, and it's like this kind of tastes like something that they tasted last week.
Yeah,
you know, like it feels so modern in so many ways, and yeah. Anyway, we should talk about it.
Yeah, back to the films we're talking about. Handmaiden. Because I think we went off to Old Boy and we were like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, Handmaiden. What else did I fucking love? I thought, yeah, the music in particular, especially like re-listening. Particularly, there's a song on YouTube called "My Tanako, My Suki," I think something like that, and that is, or "The Tanako, My Suki," or something like that. That is, like I just just gets into my heart. The sweeping, swelling nature of it, and the building like it's like it has that like.
It feels like part Game of Thrones, part Christopher Nolan, part like Hans Zimmer.
When I was listening to it, I thought maybe it had that same kind of Interstellar Inception style, like build and that sweeping
swell,
the swelling nature of it all.
And it works because you're just so invested in the movie. So as you're getting all of this imagery, unlike some Nolan movies where the characters don't quite land as well. You know what I mean? And then it almost sometimes feels like the music's manipulating you. Whereas here, it just like everything is working. Yeah. Every single thing is on point and you're...
It's almost like the music is like, hey, the melodrama's here. Let's bring the melodrama to here, and it makes the acting have to come to here. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, because it's incredibly melodramatic in terms of like, I literally was watching the first hour and I'm like, this is what I imagine Downton Abbey is like. Like, for real. Which I haven't seen, but I imagine is very melodramatic. With this sweeping, you know, kind of like that OC, like, which is the only kind of show like that where it's just all romance, it's all heightened feelings, and everything is important, you know, and it's, I love you love me, and it's all switching and swirling. But this, I felt the music was just bombastically like, it just embraced what the film was, and then I felt like it added everything, like.
Yeah, it elevated it.
Yeah, it's a wild romp, and romp's not a good phrase. Erotic thriller. It's a fun erotic thriller. I think it's an erotic thriller, right? Because it does have enough full-on sex scenes to call it.
Yes.
But
the erotic, like I said to you, the erotic part of it fell away for me in the years after watching it.
Yeah, you forgot that we're in it.
And I remember the romance, and I remember that, because I remember watching it again a couple of days ago after recommending it to you, and recommending it to so many people. So many people over the last 4 years I've told to watch this movie. Most of them come back and go, oh, I loved it. But I imagine there are a lot who get up to there and go,
okay.
What? Yeah, this fucking Keiran
guy. In a little
guy.
way, it can probably feel like maybe that's what the film's going to become. Because it's still a full hour. And it's not, and it's like...
It's like like blue is the warmest color. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, but the lady I was saying that hated this movie for its lesbian portrayal, she was like, there's 2 films that fucking pissed me off. Blue is the warmest color. I have never heard of it until she said it. So that's my only...
I really like that movie.
I don't think you're a lesbian writer.
But I think she's probably right about the sex scenes in that movie.
Right.
I feel like because we are recontextualizing the sex scenes all the way throughout the movie, and we are being re-delivered scenes, just like the dialogue scene is as important as the sex scene to re-establishing where these characters are emotionally, and with the information that we've been presented to up until that point, we're looking at these characters through different lights. So for me, the fact that they're in a bed scissoring or any of these things are going on is secondary to the emotional relationship going on here. Blue is the warmest color is 40 minutes of scissoring.
Really?
With no and
is it the same? Like it feels like they just did it.
It feels like
it was actually like in The Handmaiden. I'm like there was a one shot. I was like, whoa! Like this just feels like sex. Like,
well, blue is the warmest color. They had artificial vaginas so they could actually,
What?
They actually went down on each other with
and
artificial.
You see that?
Yeah, you see a lot of
This movie is essentially porn, except that you don't actually see anything except for boobs, like actually.
Yeah,
right?
boobs and ass.
But I mean, but all movies can show boobs.
Exactly.
You can show boobs and ass in a fucking Adam Sandler movie, really.
Yeah. You can see also the way, when they're in the bed and you got that top-down view, the leg is covering their face. So you're you're filling
Yeah.
all the blanks in.
Yeah. We were
Blue
like,
is
you know what's happening.
blue is the warmest color. You're not filling the blanks in.
Right, it's like,
You're like, they're really having sex, and then you find out they had fake, like over the top.
For some reason that makes me feel really weird. I'm like,
Yeah,
"Ugh."
it's almost like maybe you should have just done it. But also, the director was really creepy on that movie. But also, that movie is fantastic, and everything that isn't the sex scenes is so good.
So maybe I'll just fast forward.
I actually think that if you cut the sex scene out of the Blue is the warmest color, you both make it a tighter and better movie.
Wait, you lose 40 minutes. It's very nice and tight.
Like there is a sex scene that is just way too long. And when you're watching it, you're like, I'm fully aware that and it comes at a point where you're like, when it happens, because there's been this build, you get that cathartic release like you do in The Handmaiden.
Yeah.
But The Handmaiden cuts away. And then you get a little bit here, and then you get more later, and then more you know.
And whereas you get that beautiful shot at the end where they're both kind of. It's like almost like two halves like a vase. Or
yeah,
something. Like they're so
it's
elegant.
beautiful.
Yeah, and the way it's symmetrical, they're both the same,
and
they're both like on the same level, like status. She's not the handmaiden. It's just
in Blue is the warmest color. It just keeps going and going and going. And you're like, all right, I get it. I get what you were going for. And even if like, like every guy, if they were going to jerk off to this, has come already.
You've done it 3 times. Stop.
We have had enough. You can go, and then the movie moves on and is as good and just gets better and better. And I love Blue is the warmest color, but I do think the sex detracts from it, and I think it stops a lot of people watching it. Handmaiden. I think this lady that you watched is looking at everything through the lens of.
It was just one review, and I was like, oh, it's just kind of interesting because I was like, oh shit, like I almost like. It was just funny because I was like, oh man, I almost forgot that like they were lesbians because just like I was like so mixed up in just like she's the handmaiden and she's like above her, and it's that weird like, ooh, you think you're above me, but I'm above you. But then the chick's like literally above her being hung, being like, oh, I'm actually tricking you. And just for me. But then at the end, they're like symmetrical together. I'm like, this is so nice. I fucking love the handmaid character, like actress. There was just parts in it where like.
I actually looked her, like generally I'll watch a movie and I'll go look the director up and find all their other movies. I looked the 2 leads up and I'm like, I want to watch movies. The lead girl who you liked more has been in a couple of other critically acclaimed things. So I think I'm going to check those out.
Yeah, I should too. I think it's something, I mean, both lead actresses, because they're the ones that really shift in terms of like, you're watching it and you're like, oh man, she's in control, she's not. I really felt like the naive little girl was like manipulating, and then I was like, oh no, she's obviously being the one tricked, and just the subtle acting, were they just doing the same thing both? But I don't know, it really blew me away, and I was like, so just like enthralled by it. And there was this one bit where just the way she was like moving her body and like just the upright nature and the kind of, I don't know, it was just like really interesting, like the way she was like presented herself throughout the film, just like physically, which I thought was really interesting, how that switched and made me like, one way she's kind of going the same skip and I'm like, I see it as this. And then it's like, oh no, it is just a naive schoolgirl, like, you know what I mean? It's just, I thought it was just so clever and like kind of, I really had never seen something and gone, I'm baffled that these characters are entirely different. And then at the end, when I was going to say Japanese, but it's just the rich lady who's in the suit at this point, and she takes the mustache off, and she looks so different. And I'm like, who are these 2 people? And I was like, this feels like a 3-hour. Like, I feel like I've watched something. I've seen these lives just shape and turn. Yeah, I was like...
And they won their freedom.
And they did it. They fucking won,
Yeah.
One thing that I thought was a bit like... Okay. Well, I get it, because like the guy's dead now, so it's like his people he's sending over, I guess I'll just stop. Because no one's paying him, I'm not going to look. But they get on the boat because 2 women can't be seen traveling together because he has that much power. I loved that. That was kind of scary as well. And adding that little bit of tension, like, oh, are they going to get there, or is it going to be like a horrible ending? And then when they get on, though, she does just kind of like fling the mustache and had a wave. It's all good now. I'm like, is it though? Because
you don't know that it's all good.
Yeah, we know. Yeah, so that was the only part of the film where I was like, but then again, someone could be like, well, you need to see her have a suitcase with lots of mustaches in there.
Where were they headed? Shanghai? Is that where they were going?
They're on a boat.
Yeah, that's all.
I mean, they're both leaving somewhere.
I think that, as long as they're not going to Korea and they're not going to Japan, they're just going somewhere else.
They're going away.
They're
so
free.
maybe America, Australia.
I think my favorite shot in the movie is, and it's one we see, I think, twice, is when where the Count asks her to go and get the oil art supplies because she's brought the watercolors.
She's running with all the things.
And she comes back up the hill and it's dirty on her, and you see them framed by the trees, and she's kissing him on top,
rock.
and she stands up and the wind blows through.
And he looks, he's got that hat.
Oh my God. I want to print that and put it on the wall, and then we see it again and it's
so different. You're like, they're twisting and turning everything. Everything's fake. Everyone's presenting a false.
That shot is the movie. That's the movie, I think.
They're all lying, all manipulating, but it's gorgeous, it's dramatic, and it feels like a melodrama. At first glance, it's a basic, insane melodrama of two people coming to this house to fuck this chick up, but they both kind of want to fuck her.
Yeah.
It's so like, I don't know, it's fucking sick, it's brilliant. I would be interested if this, I haven't looked, was this director, like, does he write his own stuff? Because...
Yeah, this was partially based on a book.
Oh shit, it is too. Fingertips or fingerprints or something.
Yeah. It's like a British erotic, Victorian novel, and it's been he essentially adapted it to this era and this.
He's
this
changed
place.
some of the twists and turns potentially.
Oh yeah,
I was reading.
I feel like it's very different.
Yeah, right.
I feel like the core of it is there, but. For the most part, it goes in very different directions.
I mean,
because it even says, I think it says inspired by, I don't know, because I don't know that it said based on. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
I don't really read books anyway, but I probably wouldn't read the book of this anyway.
No.
Just in terms of like, I just watched this again.
Yeah.
It's so good. Like, it's just such a grand movie. Like in terms of like just, I don't know. I was. Yeah, enthralled and disgusted.
Yeah.
Really disgusted at times. Mostly out of like the uncle character towards the end when it's like, really, I didn't expect the basement to like be anything.
To live up to your...
Well, just, I don't know. It's like, I think my expectation was set up more because he's like, remember the basement? And it was like he was talking to me because I'd just seen Parasite.
Yeah,
I was watching this and I was like, what's with basements? And I was like, there's no way it's going to be as good as that basement because the whole movie is based around this basement twist in a way where the whole film works up to that point, could literally end. The Parks could come home and they could all be like, no, we're all drunk. Oh, how do we get out of this? And then maybe they accidentally kills the guy because of the smell. It could have just ended like that. You didn't need these extra characters, but then, what a film to introduce. I feel like you could almost have the Parasite movie, he's written it and then someone's like, wouldn't it be just weird if there was like another dude in the... You know what I mean? Whereas, I don't know, this basement one was just so like, what the fuck? So great, it's such a classic torture to me. He's got jars of perverse shit. He's sexually perverse, so it's weird sex shit. Like penises and stuff. But just man. I love the squid so much. The fucking wild squid. How did he get it in there? Like, what the fuck? Where did he get the squid from? How did he put it in there? What does he feed it?
Penises, I think. All right.
I give it one squid in a jar out of one squid in a jar. And I give Parasite one squid in a jar out of one squid in a jar. Perfect. And it fills up perfectly so a bit of squid is falling out. How am I going to judge everything? It's either one squid in a jar or it's a penis in a jar. You can decide what that means.
Oh, God. Perfect. Spoiler Talk is produced by KCBN Studios and Space Kraken Media.